across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you and welcome to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are, as you well know, the home of common sense. I'm hoping to hear an awful lot of common sense, both from my guest today and indeed from you. You never know, a little bit from me as well. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fabulous to have your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything of the show or you want to catch up on anything we've talked about this week, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It's on YouTube. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, small boat migrants are going to be housed in 2 army barracks in Scotland and the south of England from next month, as Keir Starmer piles pressure on the Home Office to end the use of asylum hotels within a year. Previously, he said by the end of 2029, but I mean, given that they're actually looking at tendering for contracts for hotels to house asylum seekers and channel migrants past 2030, I think it's probably a little bit unlikely. 900 migrants will be housed under the plans in Inverness and in East Sussex. What do they plan to do with the other 31,100 plus all the others who arrive? I mean, this is an absolute joke of a policy, but there we are. Usual rules here. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly on this. What do you think should be done with the 32,000 channel migrants who are currently in hotels? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with me on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. But, of course, as always, you are free to call about whatever you want to talk about. Also going to be talking about the budget. We are in, very close territory now, and Labour's plan to hammer homeowners, okay, admittedly, very rich homeowners, with a new mansion tax is hanging like a sword of Damocles over the housing market, according to experts. Under the plan, owners of properties worth at least £2 million would face a charge of 1% of any amount over that value. As you've got a £3 million home, you're going to be paying an extra 10 grand a year in tax. But, of course, that's out of taxed income. So, really, it's costing you 20 grand, probably, on the sort of incomes those people are on. But this comes as the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said she was, of course, looking at tax increases to fill the government's £30 billion black hole. But things looking so bad on every front for her. Is she actually going to have to blatantly break those election manifesto promises about things like, income tax? And no, not just for those rich people over there, but for everybody. We'll talk about that. Plus, David Lammy, never far from the news, our Justice Secretary. He's been branded Calamity Lammy by his shadow, Robert Jenrick, as he faced a Commons grilling yesterday over the mistaken release from prison of Ethiopian sex offender Hadush Kabati. The Deputy PM came under fire from MPs as he revealed that human error appeared to be to blame for the blunder. I mean, tell us something we don't know. And a protester heckled the King about Prince Andrew during a cathedral visit on Monday. The man shouted questions about how much the King did or did not know and when about the disgraced Prince and convicted paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein as the King visited Staffordshire. Also, of course, ongoing issues over where Prince Andrew's going to live and why disgraced royals and who've lost all their other titles other than Prince should be given a grace and favour mansion at all. But there we are. It's amazing how many properties there are on the Windsor estate, isn't it? Anyway, 6 minutes past 10 is the time now. Delighted to welcome the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, to the show, as I regularly do on a Tuesday. Morning to you.
Morning.
Where do we start? Where do we start? We've got this plan, latest plan, two of these barracks. These are in Inverness and in East Sussex. A total of 900 migrants could be housed in them by the end of next month. They're going to be the first of up to 10,000 migrants who the Home Office is hoping to house on military sites, working with the MOD to find several more disused sites. But I certainly know one of these sites, I think the one in Inverness, is actually possibly the East Sussex one is actually. It's actually in a town. I mean, it's not out of town. It's the whole point is people don't want these people walking among us. Doesn't deal with the many other tens of thousands who are here. Those in hotel accommodation, very expensive, but also living in houses of multiple occupancy, or the massive backlog, over 100,000. I mean, it also doesn't deal with the fact that these people will be free to just wander in and out, same as they were with the Bibi Stockholm.
And it's one of those things where I can't work out whether the government are just really stupid or they think we're stupid.
Bit of both.
They're almost certainly so. It's so clear that when people are upset about the hotels being used for illegal migrants and asylum seekers, yes, part of it is because the place where they used to hold the wedding or the Christian reception or whatever is now deprived to them, but it's also because of the issue of illegal migration, the fact that there are undocumented men, we don't know where they're from, we don't know what charges they might be fleeing in another country, roaming around in their communities, and a non-negligible number of them actually committing crimes. The idea that you just
and I don't know
them,
what number would be an acceptable number.
No, exactly, because I don't
well, it was just one
even...
14-year-old who was sexually abused.
And this is what people don't want to put up with. So the idea that the government is like, OK, we've heard you, so put them in flats. Or we'll put them in army barracks, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. You think, no.
No, you haven't. Yeah.
The issue is illegal migration. That's what people want dealt with. Just moving the issue around the country into different types of accommodation is really not going to cut it.
Yeah. This is like a man who repeatedly has affairs, and his wife says, please stop having affairs. And he says, OK, well, I'll only have an affair with my mistress, but I'll do it in a hotel. Or, no, I'll do it when I'm in other countries. Like, no, that wasn't the issue. Yeah. No, the infidelity was the issue. I'm not speaking of personal experience. I need to stress that someone's going to end up in the Express or something. But genuinely, it is properly that they don't get it. And the reason, we talk about this on the show a lot, because they genuinely don't get it. This lot, Labour lot, we talk about, the lanyard classes, they genuinely don't think it's an issue that there are a load of people who are undocumented young males from far-flung countries, from a very different culture from us, who have completely different attitudes to women and girls, that they are coming to this country and breaking into this country illegally and being allowed to stay. They actually think that they genuinely think we're all racist and bigoted. They're thinking it's a problem. So they pretend to deal with it, and they want us to stop talking about it, because the solution is not to stop them coming in or to get rid of them. The solution is for everyone to shut the hell up. That's the solution. Same with grooming gangs, same with everything. Shut up. Just shut up. Stop talking about it, because you talking about it is the problem.
And that's why they think that if they just move the problem around, people will not notice. Of course not. There is so much focus on this issue now. I remember when the hotels protests were kicking off in the summer, it was very quickly you then saw that, even when there was just a block of flats in Waterlooville, which there was talk of it being handed over to become a legal migrant asylum accommodation, there were protests almost imminently. So even if the government thinks they can get away with this, they won't be allowed to get away with it. There's too much scrutiny.
But there is this view that if they're sort of out of town, that's not such an issue as, a hotel, near a secondary school like the Bell Hotel in Epping, which sparked all of this, and of course is where, this Epping migrant was housed when he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old and a woman within weeks of arriving in this country. But also, I've always said I would rather they were in I don't want them in hotels. I don't want them here at all. But I'd rather they were in hotels than they were living in a terraced house next door to me or you and near a school, and we don't know who they are. Well, my local hotel that's now an asylum hotel. When you actually go look at it, you can see straight away. Oh, it says not open to the public.
Yeah.
This, you can't get in. There's security guards everywhere. It's a very forbidding entrance now, instead of a hello, welcome to your local hotel. So at least you've got there's a hub. You can focus on it. You could make sure you could say to your daughters, maybe don't walk past this place. But not if they're living, at number 42 and number 38.
Yeah, and that's something which has already started to happen, and also it seems like we might end up seeing more of it, particularly as the hotels becomes a hot button issue, because this is very one-dimensional way the government are looking at this problem. And again, it's quite clear that it's not going to go away. And I guess the one thing they seem to be genuinely upset about now that they're in government is the cost. There was that Home Affairs Select Committee report talking about how much that has tripled in cost in quite a short amount of time.
15 billion quid.
And it is like 75% of the asylum accommodation budget is these hotels, so it is crazy.
And it's 145 a day instead of 23 a day. I mean, there you go.
Exactly. And
I've gone to weddings and stayed in cheaper hotels and 145.
No, exactly.
A night, for goodness
a lot
sake.
of these rooms are 2 to a room and all the rest of it. It's the amount of taking the Michael that's been taking place. And
someone's making a lot of money.
Absolutely. A lot of kind of failing hotel chains, shall we say, who've been able to coin it in off the back of government.
Our local one, they'd closed down because of lack of business, because they get a load of business from big concerts and things like that. And they closed down from that, did a refurb, reopened, no business.
Yeah.
Oh, well, next thing you know, There they are. They're at Asylum Hotel, full every day. There you go, sorted.
It's become a great plan B for a lot of flailing businesses. Yeah. But the thing is, even if the Bell Hotel were putting up those migrants out of the goodness of their own heart, it would still be a problem. It would still be objected to by the local residents. Yeah. We would have still seen the Ethiopian asylum seeker come to this country and commit those offences within 8 days of arriving. So I think, again, they can only think about this in terms of, oh, they're upset about the hotels, let's do something about the hotels, or, oh, it's quite expensive, isn't it, let's do something about that. That's not the issue.
Always the wrong end of the stick. I mean, what do you make of The Sun? This is a great story. But again, we shouldn't be surprised by this. A charity bankrolled by the Home Office, i.e. by you and me. I mean, again, as far as I can tell, every charity in this country spends its time constantly lobbying against every government policy or every policy that is supported by the public, right? Funded by the public, using government money. There are very few charities that seem to be funded just by charitable donations. I don't know why taxpayers' money is funding charity. If we think that job needs to be being done, why are we asking a charity to do it? I don't really understand that. But Migrant Help, they're called. I wonder what they do. I wonder whose side they're on. Migrant Help basically gets taxpayers' cash. And we're talking, I don't mean they're getting a few $100 grand, okay? They run the government's asylum helpline. Why is there an asylum helpline? I mean, they've morphed into a £60 million a year empire, almost entirely funded by you and me. They signed a 10-year deal in 2019 to advise asylum seekers and help them access housing. Oh, I mean, yeah, by all means, let's have an extra service for people who've got no sodding right to be here. 235 million quid, that deal was. It is now ballooned to £385 million. They've now branched into our schools. They have a nationwide schools programme to, in their words, challenge the mindset of pupils as young as 8 in terms of their views about our attitudes towards migrants. Now, what the actual... I won't finish this sentence because I'd be taken off air, but what the actual is going on? Why are we funding this charity? Why don't all the people, all those people, the Lib Dems and the Greens and the Labour, who think, oh, the migrants, they're wonderful, why don't you all put your money and go and volunteer at a helpline and pay for this? No wonder these people are coming here and they've got this. What the hell are these people doing in our classrooms? It's bad enough having the trans activists, the Stonewalls, the climate propagandists in our classrooms. And by the way, if you think those people aren't in your kids' classroom, trust me, my daughter was at one of the sanest schools I could find, and they had a cross-dressing man in with his wife to tell us about how wonderful it was to be trans. And that was a man who thought, by the way, that 10-year-olds should be allowed to change gender. I mean, so I'm sorry. Don't think there weren't words about that from Mummy Julia, but there we are. I mean, and that was one of the sane schools. So God knows what's happening in an awful lot of other schools.
You're kind of graded on a curve in North London, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, there are some schools where basically, I mean, good luck your kid coming out of school not trans, frankly. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm actually not even joking. But our kids are being propagandised. Yeah. We're paying for propagandists to go into our schools. Of course, I don't want my kid. I certainly have not raised my kid, and I want anyone's kid to be raised to be, to be racist or to be sort of anti-foreign or anything. None of that nonsense at all. But to basically, what are they doing? What are they telling us? That asylum, that loads of migrants coming by boat and paying people smugglers is a good thing?
It's insane. And also, you had a lot of schools which managed to convince themselves that a lot of the topics they were basically propagandising to kids weren't contentious. It's just about living as who you are, the trans issue, or it's just about the environment and it's not got anything to do with politics. This is like the key political issue of our era. It divides the country. The vast majority of people know that you have to do something about illegal migration.
People with brains, eyes and ears.
Yeah, but it's still one of those things like, this is a live political issue. To have people going in to schools at the taxpayers' expense, basically trying to say that, what your mum and dad probably say when they're discussing the news over the kitchen table in the morning, they're wrong and they're horrible people. I mean, it's just crackers, but this is what we've come to expect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is extraordinary. What do you make of a Calamity Lammy? Quite like that nickname from Robert Jenrick.
I'm a bit gutted I didn't think of it.
I know. How did we know? Surely someone must have come up with that somewhere.
That entire time.
But he's under around the comments. He did it. He's so pompous. David Lammy. I know I talk too fast, guys. Sorry. What can I say? There's just too much going on. But David Lammy speaks very, very slowly in a very pompous way, as if what he is saying is extraordinarily important. It rarely is. And he was making a statement in the Commons, and he's talked about, human error of this release of this epic sex offender by accident. It's happened this year. Look, we know something like 262 have been released. It's doubled, basically, in the last year under Labour. So something's going wrong. But I plague on all their houses because, Tories as well, the underfunding. I don't know, I'm not quite sure why. I'm underfunded, therefore I can't do my job properly and check paperwork. I never understood. So when people go, well, he's not very good at his job, but he's got a bad attitude because he's on minimum wage. Yeah, that's why he's going to stay on minimum wage the rest of his life, because actually getting on with it and having a good attitude and doing your job well is how you get off minimum wage. That's what most of us had to do to get off minimum wage. And yes, I've done plenty of minimum wage jobs. But I mean, some might think I should go back to them. But I mean, they're going to set up an independent probe into this mistaken release. I mean, I don't think it's fair to blame David Lammy directly as the new Justice Secretary for this. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm no fan of the man, but...
I get that. I suppose the one caveat you could say is that someone somewhere should have said, look, this needs to come off without a hitch.
Yeah.
This is really important that there is no problems. He was like, at the time he was accidentally released, he was kind of the most high-profile sex offender in the country in many respects. People saw him out in the street in Chelmsford and instantly started recording him because they knew who he was. I mean,
that's quite a giveaway, isn't it?
And the fact that he actually, I'm not trying to give him any credit here, but the fact that he actually was like walking back into the prison trying to work out what was going on.
Well, he actually said, apparently, according to Slorridge, but I'm supposed to be being deported.
Yeah, like what's going on, where am I supposed to go? If the system is so dysfunctional, it has to rely on the sex offender doing the right thing. It's really not great.
Going out on a limb. Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't be laughing about it, and yet... but we're Keystone Cops country. That's what we are, really.
And that's the thing, because even though this, the human error does happen, although there's been a lot of it happening recently in the prison service, it looks like, there's also a sense in which it becomes a kind of symbol of how top to bottom the system just doesn't work.
Well, I tweeted something when this came out at the weekend. Who's running the prisons, who's running justice in this country? Is it Laurel and Hardy? Lot of very angry Laurel and Hardy fans saying literally, like, you can't, don't you demean Laurel and Hardy, they do a better job.
Don't drag them into this.
Exactly. Let's talk about reform. Very much in the news. We had Nigel Farage yesterday having to deal with the Sarah Poaching comments, actually on this station, an interview with Peter Cardwell. And I've had some, run-ins with her as well in terms of like not knowing what the two-child benefit cap is. I'm saying with Nigel Farage as well on this issue, but she said some stupid words. I agree with them. I don't think she meant it in a racist way. I don't think she is racist. I mean, I have no idea what's in her heart, but she was it was cack-handed. But she was expressing a concern and an irritation, I think, that a lot of people do have about the sort of the propagandising in adverts in every TV show, BBC, ITV, everyone. I mean, it's just non-stop of the sort of, this is what the country should look like, this is what is the normal, and I think people have got fed up with it, the demeaning of particularly, and the caller who'd originally made the call, it was on my show yesterday, talking about the demeaning of white men, the demonising of white men that goes on, is routine in TV shows and in adverts. And
it's one of those things where you can understand why people are upset about it. You can also understand why some people would not be that bothered by it. But at the same time, to suggest that what view you take on this particular issue means you're racist or not is obviously nonsense. She could have expressed herself a bit better. She's now apologised for it.
A lot better.
And it's the sort of thing where I resent the idea that a politician, regardless of what political party they belong to, have a few poor choice words and then they apologise for them, but it still becomes a story for days and days and days. I get why it gets eyeballs. I get why it creates a spicy media debate. I understand that politicians like it because they can land blows against each other, but it does demean the substance of the issue. Can we get on with Can we talk about the substance? Exactly. And again, it was interesting how often the questions yesterday at the press conference Nigel Farage gave were, and he was obviously promising alongside one of the grooming gang victims who's been absolutely fantastic in terms of actually speaking out on this issue, and was one of those who has resigned from the body to this is Eliane Reynolds to actually oversee the national public inquiry, and he's basically said, look, this isn't going to work. We're going to have a parliamentary investigation. We can do this cross-party. He was speaking to the Speaker of the House of Commons last night, and he also talked about how London could be the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. I have no doubt at all that will be the case, and we'll think of the scale, 9 million people, rather bigger than Rotherham or Rochdale. It's going to be huge. So
he was right. He rather overshadowed some of that, but that is, you know, do you think that's a goer at all? That parliamentary route, or the fact that it's Nigel Farage proposing it means ain't going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where he's obviously been given a tremendous opening because of the fact that the national inquiry is just completely unravelled. And it does raise questions about, given how the Labour Party are in charge, and also just how dysfunctional and via this issue kind of corrupt the state is on this particular issue, you do wonder whether or not the national inquiry is just going to be consumed by this infighting for a long time, either because there are genuine issues with how it's being set up, or because there's just so much distrust in it because of how the victims have been treated, not just in their own cases but in the setting up of this inquiry. So it does make you think maybe there's another way to do this. I've always thought actually it's something that should be official and statutory, but something that's very much focused on prosecutions, something that's very much focused on the kind of task force that the last government set up, but on steroids, which has been very much focused on let's find these suspects and lock them up, also the people who covered it up.
Well, no, that's for me. That's what it's about, because there's already criminal prosecutions going on of the men, not on enough scale, but that, you know, that's a different thing. But looking at why were so many men not prosecuted for so many years? It seems to be that so blatantly. I don't understand why any of these things need to take that long. You know, the bloody Sunday inquiry, the COVID inquiry, which is an absolute waste of time. I mean, literally the biggest waste of time you could possibly imagine. There's no reason. Again, it's total abject failure to get anything done in this country, which leads into what Reform are announcing today. And Danny Kruger, who's obviously a Tory defector to Reform, who was on Kev's show this morning, talking about his speech he's making today as well, about basically promising these deep cuts in the civil service, massive reform of the civil service. There's no doubt at all that the big, you know, the opposition, when it comes to if there is a Reform government, the opposition will be the blob, the civil service, not you know, the Tories or Labour. It's going to be the civil service. And it's interesting that Labour obviously thought, you know, the lefty civil service has been blocking a load of things the Tories want to do over the last few years. But don't worry, we'll be in charge, and they love us. Nope, turns out they can't get anything done either.
And I think that's been instructive in terms of, yes, the civil service, there's tremendous groupthink, blobthink, whatever you want to call it. The fact that in the last government you would have, I think Kemi Badenoch once said that when she was trying to push through making all of the lavatories in government buildings single sex, she would get, you know, notes written back on her copy. We can't do this, we can't do that because of this and that. So it's quite clear that they're shaping policy. They're also just useless, that the whole system doesn't work. Like Labour are doing things that the civil service are broadly happy with. I mean,
they still can't.
They allowed, you know, they brought in Sue Gray to basically set the agenda. She was a career civil servant, and yet they pull a lever and nothing happens. That is the British state.
But that's Tony Blair found that as well. Again, he talked about that as well. This is the massive issue, and again, they forget that they are servants. And it's interesting, Danny Kruger saying basically when a new prime minister gets elected, he says if Nigel Farage gets elected, and he said when he's not going to arrive, and then, you know, the head of the civil service goes, yes, a new temporary incumbent, and you know, would you like to change the curtains, sir? As opposed to, right, you know, the civil service answers not to the cabinet secretary, to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the leader of the party which has the majority in Parliament, the elected representative organisation in this country, who has a mandate from the people. End of. Nothing discussed. And if you don't like it, do one. And there has to be a really clear message about that, and it's going to have to be Doge style. Of course, Elon Musk didn't get rid of as many people or get rid of as much spending as possible, but for me it's less about the cost, even though that was his big issue. It's just about freeing up our country to get stuff done. If you don't want to get stuff done, go and do something else.
No.
Go and work for a migrant charity. Paid for by the state.
Absolutely. And the idea that we still have this civil service, which is the envy of the world, and so effective. Well, everyone knows this is nonsense. It's full of, you know, people who are getting shuffled from one department to the other. It's quite difficult to move people on if they're useless. There's a lot of failing upwards.
They usually get promoted.
Exactly. There's a lot of failing upwards that goes on in the civil service. Everyone knows it. We've had governments of both Labour and Tory persuasion over the past 20 years who, you know, realise just how bad the problem is. So something definitely needs to be done. And hopefully this will work.
I know we need to move on. We get some calls. I want to talk about other things, you know, Prince Andrew and where he's going to live, and the budget, and goodness knows what. We've got lots coming up. Hurricane Melissa about to hit Jamaica as well, not just local people, but of course lots of tourists there as well. But Tom, I also want to mention your brilliant new documentary I was watching last night by Spiked. You're the editor of Spiked Online, and a documentary about online censorship. And I mean, the title says it all, Think Before You Post. I can't recommend this enough. is a superb documentary. Tell us just briefly what about it.
No, it's very kind of you to say. So yes,
and I'm not just saying that because he's here. I'd already messaged him going, oh my God, this is so good.
I'm very glad you liked it. Yes, so it's called Think Before You Post, which are those very sinister words that the government was foghorning out after Southport last year, not just telling people not to go out and commit violence, but telling people not to air their views on social media. So we just thought we'd go out and speak to the people who had that knock at the door, who had their collars felt, the Borehamwood couple who were arrested in front of their child for complaining too vigorously to their child's primary school.
In a perfectly reasonable way.
Exactly. Alison Pearson for that bizarre Orwellian ordeal she went through over a year-old tweet that she'd already deleted. And Jamie Michaels, a former Royal Marine from Wales, who was arrested for a video that he made after Southport saying that we need security around schools, calling for things to be done in the right way, petitioning MPs, nothing violent. He ends up being put on remand for 17 days and then acquitted by a jury of his peers in 17 minutes. So it's a kind of way to try and the human story behind this crazy situation that we found ourselves in, where 30 people are arrested each day for tweets. So yeah, it's called Think Before You Post. It's on YouTube and X and all the usual places.
And you can find, I think it's pinned on your page, and I tweeted it yesterday. Genuinely, really, I messaged you, didn't I? It's just, this is the sort of documentary that Panorama used to do, and now they don't bother anymore. I mean, no, genuinely, it's well worth your time. It really is. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. I've got a funny feeling I know what you're going to be calling in about. This is Talk.
This Justice Secretary could not deport the only small boat migrant who who tried to be deported. Yes. Having been mistakenly released, Hadush Kabatu came back to prison asking to be deported, not once, not twice, but 5 times. But he was turned away. Calamity Lammy strikes again.
Whoever across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. The home of common sense. Let's go straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Jason is in Wiltshire. Jason, what do you want to talk about?
Morning, Julia. Thanks for taking the call this morning.
Thank you for calling, as always. What do you want to say, my love?
I'm talking about the old asylum seekers going into these army barracks. Can you remember the Bibby Stockholm? They completely revamped all that, didn't they? They spent millions on it.
Still wasn't good enough.
No, still wasn't good enough. And also, we have seen the poor conditions they expect our armed service forces to be staying in these barracks.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours do you give before the human rights lawyers start rubbing their hands and this isn't happening?
Well, if it's out of town, there isn't a convenient enough bus service to take them into town.
Mental health problems as well, Julia, because you can't go and do your scuba diving lessons and you can't go and do...
get your art lessons for free from the council and make use of those half-price passes to the leisure centre. I mean, it'll all be very unfair. You just think this won't fly. It's not going to happen.
Well, something that's really riled me up. We've just been on holiday. We just had a couple of weeks in Tobago.
Yeah. Get you.
Talking to the well, it was nice actually. There was no phones, there was no laptop, nothing. Just playing cards, board games, and chatting.
Yep.
The locals, like Trinidadis and that, want to come to England. Genuine, hard-working people. They say it's impossible to get into your country.
Yeah.
The visas you've got to fill out. You've got to do this. And one bloke said, "I'll come in a boat."
Wow.
And I had to walk away.
Yeah, I know. I can feel your pain. I can feel your pain. Jason, no longer from Wiltshire, from Tobago. There we go. Tarquin is in London, a bit closer to home. Good morning to you, Tarquin. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Donna. How are you? You're doing a fantastic job, I have to say. It's beautiful to hear your voice. But Anne, listen, what I think, tell me about this. This is just for a little hypothesis. I want to run past you because you're really good on this stuff too. Joined up thinking time. Fabians, don't listen because you won't get this. Basically, what I think they're going to try and do is, the optics of hotels looks terrible. Okay, let's stick them in RAF Scampton and other, RAF and Army X bases. What they've announced then what they'll do, as you quite rightly say, when human rights lawyers they'll say, well, they've got to be within 1 mile of an infant's playground. It's against the human rights. No, I jest. But what I think they would do then, on the serious note, is they are joined up thinking with Rachel Reeves's budget coming up November, where she is going to turn the screw on old people, particularly elderly people who have a fixed income, who have huge mansion tax prices. They'll be almost at fire sale, pennies on the dollar to bail out because they can't afford it anymore, at which point BlackRock et al. Other brands are available and supported by the government. Of course, Fink was in 10 Downing Street in recent history, and then they will do deals with Serco. Next thing you know,
they're moving people in.
Every town, every street in town, my darling. That's what they're going to do.
Right, Tarquin, the only flaw in this is that they're not clever enough to have a plan.
Well, I hope you're right.
No, they're not. They don't, trust me, they do not have a plan. And if they did have a plan, they're too incompetent, but they are literally lurching from crisis to crisis. Tarquin, I'm going to have to leave it there, but loving that. Tarquin in London, thank you very much indeed for that. I've got some very sad breaking news for you. Very sadly, the actress Prunella Scales, best known, of course, for her role as Sybil in Fawlty Towers, has sadly died at the age of 93. Her sons have issued a statement saying, "Our darling mother, Prunella Scales, died peacefully at home in London yesterday. She was 93. Although dementia forced her retirement from a remarkable acting career of nearly 70 years, she continued to live at home. She was watching Fawlty Towers the day before she died." I mean, that's very sad. I mean, 93 is a good innings, I think. Let's be honest about that. But Tom said, a superb actress. I mean, at Fawlty Towers was beyond genius. And they only ever made, I think, was it 12 episodes? Wanted to make sure that that every episode is perfect.
No, absolutely, and just every episode was perfect. So the amount of cultural impact she's had, the Sybil Fawlty character was so brilliant. Such a great foil in that particular sitcom, and obviously had an illustrious acting career beyond that as well. So as you say, it's a great innings, and a great career and a great cultural impact in a way that you almost don't have as much anymore. That kind of one show or that one performance, which is seen by absolutely everyone, and that was certainly the case with her.
Basil! I mean, you can just hear it, can't you? Very sad news there. 10:36 is the time. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk to the former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you and welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater here and is here as well. And Trevor Kavanagh joins us. He's former political editor at The Sun. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
So much to talk about. Let's get straight to the latest promise. They're going to get all of these, 10,000 channel migrants out of hotels, out of the 32,000 who are currently in hotels, out of the 102,000 who are currently in the country in other accommodation, and they're going to get them into military barracks, starting with 900 up in Scotland and in East Sussex. I mean, problem sorted, Trevor. Yeah, it all goes away.
Well, as you said earlier, Julia, believe it when you see it. I mean, this is a tiny proportion of the numbers who have come into this country in recent times. If they got 10,000 into these barracks, which, by the way, are going to be pretty grim accommodation because the poor old squaddies who have had to live in these rat-infested, damp homes across the country have been complaining about them for decades. And, you know, human rights people are not going to allow foreign invaders, as I would call them, to come and live in places that the troops don't like. So, I mean, look, this isn't going to work. It's not going to solve the problem. They shouldn't be coming, and that's that.
And this is the thing. We were discussing with Tom Slater a bit earlier, Labour, and I think the Tories to a large extent as well, at least they paid lip service pretending to care. But the Labour Party, I mean, you've known a lot of these people for years. I mean, when you were political, you'd have known some of these people as just, little lowly, bag carriers, and now they're in the cabinet. That they genuinely don't really think that this mass invasion, as you say, of our, young, military-aged men on our shores, undocumented from far-flung lands with very different cultures, they don't actually really think it's a problem. They think the problem is us talking about it.
Yes, they think the problem is with the vast and overwhelming majority of the British people who stupidly elected them. And
all right.
I think that, but, this is a serious, serious problem. We have been invaded. We are being invaded by the day by countless numbers. I know that there is a rounded figure, but we really don't know how many, but it's in the hundreds of thousands, certainly tens of thousands of people coming undocumented from various countries, not least Pakistan and Afghanistan, where Islamic State has quite a strong foothold.
Yep.
What percentage of those tens of thousands might be either Islamic State or sympathizers? I would say quite a significant proportion. And when you see what was going on in the streets of Tower Hamlets over a few days ago, when people in balaclavas, which I think are hideous and sinister and should be banned along with the burqa, in fact, ahead of the burqa, that is a threat to our country, which has yet to manifest itself on the streets of Britain.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredibly sinister. And again, the police banning a UKIP march, saying that would be provocative, could promote tensions and violence, but not thinking that a load of men in masks and balaclavas and hoodies, pretty much all wearing black, carrying foreign flags, Bangladeshi flag, the Palestinian flag, and shouting Allahu Akbar. Like, no, in no way is that intimidating. Not at all. No one's going to think that that's going to be provocative.
No, and we keep prefacing every remark that we make about this problem by saying most Muslims are decent, law-abiding people, which is true. But that simply does not apply to the very visible, large number of people who are on the streets of Tower Hamlets, the biggest Muslim community in this country, untouched by the police, unmolested by police, while, as you say, a small group of protesters from UKIP, which is now basically redundant, were barged away to some other place.
Absolutely.
That is an indication of what's going to be happening on the streets if Nigel Farage ever wins office.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, it's interesting. We'll talk about that, the grooming gangs. But I want to ask you just about David Lammy, first of all, dubbed Calamity Lammy by Robert Jenrick, his shadow as Justice Secretary. How much do you blame David Lammy for the Epping migrant sex offender being released accidentally? Is it his fault? Or actually, can a lot of the blame be laid not just at human error in one particular prison, but actually on cuts since 2010 to the justice system?
Yes, the justice system has been the poor relation of government spending in the public sector for decades, and it's been increased. It's always the one that can absorb the latest cut to probation service, to court hearings, to the whole process from arrest to trial has been cut to the bone. And Chris Grayling deserves a great deal of blame for that, a Tory cabinet minister.
Although they would have been doing the bidding of George Osborne, who was then Chancellor.
Well, George Osborne too, but you can include him in almost everything that's gone wrong with the last 15 years of Tory government. So, yes, it's a lot of people's fault, but the simple fact is that not only have the Tories got a lot to answer for, so has Labour, which had 14 years to prepare for this, knowing full well what the problem was.
Yeah.
And they haven't. I mean, Lammy is not just an incompetent buffoon. He doesn't really care.
I mean, I don't think many people would disagree with that, probably within his own party as well. Talking about things that people don't really care about, it turns out, grooming gangs. We had that press conference from Nigel Farage alongside one of the grooming gang survivors, Eliane Reynolds, who has quit the grooming gangs inquiry sort of board or liaison panel among, five who've endorsed the government and Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, and 5 who've left. Everyone's of the view that think this grooming gangs inquiry is literally collapsing. What do you make of Nigel Farage's plan to effectively try and have parliamentary investigation and do it quickly and get to the bottom of things? Do you think that's going to be a go at all? Is it a good idea but it won't work because Nigel Farage has suggested it?
Well, I think that is true. Nothing is going to happen under this government that's of any value whatsoever. We'll probably spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing very little to solve the problem of those rape gangs. I don't think we should be calling them grooming gangs. Grooming is making people look nice.
Well, no, there's actually quite a lot of survivors say specifically they do want to still use that term so people know what we're talking about. That's one of the reasons why I still use it.
Fair enough. Yeah. If that's what they want, then that's fine by me. But they are rape gangs, and these innocent young girls, I mean, they weren't even in a position to have any idea of what original sin is. They're in their teens, many of them 11 years old.
Yeah.
It's a shocking story as soon as you start to pick at the surface of it.
I mean, indeed, and everyone's saying, including Nigel Farage, that London is probably, the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. I mean, it's utterly bizarre for Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, also Police and Crime Commissioner for our capital city, that we've had it in 50. It's been, identified in some 50 towns and cities across the country, but uniquely London, with 9 million people, never happened.
No, I think Sadiq Khan exceeds even Sir Keir Starmer as the most useless political leader in the country. Not only useless in the case of Khan, but somewhat sinister in the sense that he takes no account whatsoever of real evidence that, in fact, London, along with those northern cities, is one of the key bases for the operations of these or rape or grooming gangs, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
And it remains. It's not just in the past. This is going on today in London and elsewhere.
This thing, people talk about it as if it's like a scandal at a hospital that happened 20 years ago. It's happening right now, 2 girls right now, and nothing is being done. Just finally, what do you make of Nigel Farage's announcement about the civil service reform? Well, I suppose Danny Kruger, who is one of his MPs who's come over from the Conservative side, about civil service reform and talking about when, not if, with Nigel Farage as Prime Minister, the need to sort of take on effectively the blob. I mean, we've seen Labour thinking, oh, we'll be fine because they'll be on our side. They can't get anything done either.
Well, frankly, I think that this is one of the mountains that any future government that wants a decent, well-run Britain has to climb. And I think that Nigel Farage has probably the right motivation. Whether he will get anywhere with this, I don't know. They're so entrenched and widespread. They've got tentacles everywhere. They spread right through the Quangos, the charities, Whitehall, the local authorities, the police, and everywhere else. I don't know how, and also in the classroom. Teachers are now teaching young children that immigration is a good thing. Well, give me the child at 7 and I'll give you the man.
Yeah, we are in mad territory and we're paying for it all. Trevor Kavanagh, always good to get your views on all these things. You never censor yourself. Love to hear it. Former political editor of The Sun. 10:48 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then I'm going to be talking about the latest royal scandals, heckling of the King about Prince Andrew. Just how many sex offenders was Prince Andrew actually friends with? We're going to be talking to Kinsey Schofield up next. This is Talk.
Violence went up in our prisons. Self-harm went up in our prisons. Drug abuse went up in our prisons. And prison officer numbers were cut under his watch. William Fernandez was released in error in March 2021. He was a sexual predator. He raped a 16-year-old and sexually assaulted another young woman after he was let out by prison in 2021. Was there an independent investigation? No.
This Justice Secretary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's here, but sadly muted as we talk to Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, who's, I know you've already spoken to Kev as well, here to talk about a royal stories. It's so lovely to have you in the studio.
I love
it when you're over here.
Your opinion on the royal family, because you are so sharp and opinionated, and it's good to hear a fresh perspective.
A lot of my lovely audience disagree with me on some of my views, and I think probably Tom's views on the monarchy. First of all, we've got to talk about the king getting heckled. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people feel like, it's an elderly man, cancer treatment, he's on an official trip, he's to a cathedral, and there is the king being heckled by a protester about what he knew and when, basically, about Prince Andrew, his brother, and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. What do you make of that? Actually, you know what, we should probably play a clip of it first, shouldn't we not? Let's play a quick clip so you know what we're talking about.
How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew's Charles? What do you think? Should the MPs be allowed to debate the royals in the House of Commons?
I mean, people were shouting "shut up" at him. Yeah. What do you make of that?
I mean, to me, I look at that and I think that it's an attention seeker. Do you really think that King Charles is going to stop in his tracks and say,
actually,
yeah, you're going to get the exclusive. Today, it's all about you. So I'm annoyed by that. I think that there were some fair questions shouted at him, but I also think that there's an arena where those questions can be asked and the king can offer his reaction to it.
I'm not sure shouting at an elderly man is a good look,
with
generally.
Cancer.
And it's like people shouting during, the Queen's funeral and shouting at Prince Andrew when he was behind the coffin. I mean, time and place, mate, time and place. But is there an argument that actually journalists should be asking these questions? One of my issues with a lot of royal correspondents in this country is that, they are incredibly obsequious. They think they just, I hope I get invited to a nice party at Windsor Castle, as opposed to, you're talking about a constitutional role for a monarch, and actually it is fair. It is fair to ask questions about, well, what did you know? What did your staff know? What did the police who were with Prince Andrew when he was hanging around with a man who was already a convicted, child sex offender? What staying with him in New York? You telling me that the Royal Protection Police didn't know this? Of course they did. Why was that not communicated? These are reasonable questions.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think it's fair to believe that Prince Andrew lied to his family as much as he's lied to us. There are royal protection officers that said that they lost count of the women that came through Buckingham Palace or wherever Prince Andrew was bringing them.
Randy Andy was when we all thought it was innocent.
Right, because he didn't want their names listed anywhere. Ghislaine Maxwell entered and exited as she pleased without anybody taking her name down. So I do think that there was, I think he lied to them as much as he's lied to us.
And there is an issue, isn't there? I mean, it's obvious there's no real love lost between the king and his younger brother, who was the favourite of his mother. But there does seem to be an issue that the Queen, to a certain extent, either just... I'd like lots of mums, you just want to believe what you want to believe.
Right. And I feel guilty saying this, but I put the blame on the Queen's team for not cutting him off at the knees. Why leave it for Charles to have to deal with it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's only erupted. It's only gotten worse. And when it comes to Prince Andrew specifically, he's a liability. He needs to be out of sight, out of mind. Let's pretend he didn't do what he's accused of doing sexually. It's still guilt by association. Jeffrey Epstein is a foul character, and you are who you associate with.
This is the thing. We do need to stress Prince Andrew's never actually been accused of a crime, certainly not in this country. There have been some attempts to question him in America. We're talking about his security team being questioned, some saying, well, I only give evidence in an American, to Congress, or some being questioned. They know where they were. Their records will be kept up where they were at this time or that time. What do you make of Prince Andrew's living arrangements? He stayed in Royal... I know that face was wonderful. You missed that if you're not listening on radio. He's been having this... He's having this 30-room mansion in Royal Lodge. I mean, when they say lodge, it's a mansion. And now talking about he and Fergie, for some reason, being entitled to 2 houses. Why is Fergie still on the payroll?
Yeah, well, I think that Fergie's still on the payroll because she is the one that can hurt the royal family the most. I think she knows where the bodies are buried. You know, remember, she used to scheme with Princess Diana about how they could take down the family back in the 90s.
Good point.
And I just, you know...
Let's keep her on side.
Right, yeah. And I think that that's literally what it's about, fear out of what she could reveal. Also, I'm sorry, but I question her moral compass. It's not just what she could reveal, but I wonder if she would just say outrageous. Remember when she told us that the Queen was haunting the corgis that she's taken in? I mean, this is a woman that does not necessarily speak the truth all of the time. Yeah. And well, we know
we know she and Andrew are both proven liars over their relationships and when they cut it off with Jeffrey Epstein. And we've got these pictures of Harvey Weinstein, again, another convicted rapist, sex offender. Whether he was known to be at the time or not, who knows? And again, that was a more recent story. But again, staying at Prince Andrew's home. I mean, I always say, you know, he and Fergie, they've never met a dodgy billionaire they don't like. They've never met a dodgy sex offender they don't like.
And you are the company you keep. I can't stress that enough. So when we see Andrew and Fergie with Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and some of these, you know, creeps, then we see Prince Andrew standing next to Prince William, who's going to be the king one day at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. And you are feeling bad vibes about seeing those 2 men next to each other. Yeah.
And it's quite obvious that Prince William's feeling those. Yeah. How much damage is this doing to the monarchy? There was a recent poll by Republic who want an elected head of state saying, you know, they actually support for the monarchy. And I think we all expected it would go down after the Queen. Lots of people have a lot of loyalty to the late Queen. That it's gone down below 50%. But how has that affected the monarchy and the perception of the monarchy in places like America?
I mean, I think that Harry and Meghan have actually benefited the monarchy in America. We feel sympathy towards Catherine and the King, who are dealing with cancer, and then there's Meghan, who's never met a flashbulb she doesn't like, you know, chasing the fame game aggressively.
So have you bought her jam?
No, I'd rather die in a fire, Julia, okay? But
she has not bought her jam.
No, but I think that you were talking about the King needing to answer some questions. This is one of the rare times where I think never complain, never explain is really biting them in the butt. You know, with Harry and Meghan, it actually inevitably benefited them because Harry and Meghan kept tossing grenades. They didn't say anything, and Harry and Meghan looked unhinged. Yeah. But here, it looks like they are protecting a potential predator.
But a key thing there, when they did give out a statement, when the late Queen gave out a statement about when Meghan's accusations about racism and the line "recollections may vary" was so beautifully controlled and timed, that really damaged Harry and Meghan, didn't it? I mean, it is interesting, you know, that Harry and Meghan are not the problem anymore. It's Prince Andrew. How does he just go? I mean, he has to literally disappear, doesn't he?
He does. Exile. Go away. You play your video. Play what is it? Call of Duty. We heard that he likes the video game. He likes. Play golf. Collect your own balls this time, guy. And you know, find a new way of living.
I wonder whether people think parliamentary time, though. Lib Dems talking about having a debate and a motion about him removing his titles formally as opposed to what he can put on his headed notepaper out of choice. I mean, I think a lot of people go, that's going too far. We don't care.
Oh, well, I received a business card from somebody named, he was a Duke, and he had a Gmail email address. And I was like, you know what, that tells me that anybody can have a title. No offense, but that tells me that anybody can have a title around here.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. It's been great having you in here. Kinsey Schofield, who has not bought Meghan's jam, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. I know you've got strong views on these issues, Tom says, so I'm going to bring you in just a couple of moments. Lots more to come, lots more of your calls, particularly about migrants in hotels or barracks or wherever, or certainly not sent home. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you for your company. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to talk more about small boat migrants being housed in 2 army barracks. Well, 900 of them by the end of the month. Brilliant. What are you going to do with the other 31,000? I mean, it's an absolute joke. Oh, yeah. And the other, well, pretty much another 70,000 who are in just streets and houses near you. And what they're going to do about those? Going to send any of them home? Is that the solution? Maybe it is, and yet that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon, does it? Plus, we're going to be talking about what's going to come up in the budget, including the mansion tax. Or, let's face it, most of us don't live in homes worth more than 2 million quid. But what does happen if those taxes do go on those rich homeowners? Will they be selling up more homes available for the rest of us? Or actually will they be leaving and taking the other taxes they pay with them? We'll talk about all of that. Plus, we're also going to be talking about reform if they get into government, saying they would save 100 million a year by closing expensive government buildings, moving civil servants back to Whitehall, but also, crucially, taking on the blob, establishing that the civil servants don't answer to the head of the civil service, the cabinet secretary, they answer to the Prime Minister. We'll talk about all of that later on. Lots more coming up besides. Don't forget, I want to hear from you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Particularly would like to hear from you about Keir Starmer vowing to end the use of asylum hotels with those 900 small boat migrants to be housed in 2 army barracks. What do you think should be done with the 32,000 Channel migrants currently in hotels? The number, as I say, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. But of course you can call in and have your say on any of the topics we are talking about or anything else you want to talk about. Do get in touch. Delighted to say Tom Slater, editor of Spike.net, is still with me, although been stum for the last little while, getting other guests in. But I do want to bring you back in on what Kinsey was just saying about the royals. It's not the biggest story of the day. I get that. Front pages of some newspapers, though. Where is Prince Andrew going to live? All the stuff about his titles. We've had Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, yesterday talking about having a parliamentary early day motion, or motion, a day in Parliament, having a debate about Prince Andrew and his titles. I mean, I can't think of anything more of a waste of MP's time, personally. But how concerned are you about this scandal?
Well, I think it's very damning for Prince Andrew. Of course it is, not least because of the provable lies he's told about his associations with Epstein, how close it was at what time, when did he distance himself, and so on and so forth. As you say, strenuously denies any allegations of criminal wrongdoing, and even though he is an idiot and he is the Duke of York just about, he's still, deserving of due process and shouldn't be presumed guilty.
He literally has not been. He says he never met Virginia Giuffre, if he did have sex, so she would have been 17, perfectly legal in this country.
And it's one of those things where that it's important to stress that, because I think there is a little bit of kind of damning him entirely. But he's obviously still become an enormous headache for the monarchy. He's obviously still taken the public for fools in terms of statements he's made which haven't lined up with what actually took place. And there's some quite serious allegations doing the rounds at the moment in the press, in Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir and so on, that he was enlisting private detectives or social media bots to try and come up with dirt on Virginia Giuffre. So for a woman he claims never to have met, he seems to have been quite interested in trying to discredit her. But it was still one of those things where the question now is what it means for the institution. He's clearly, there's no love lost between him and King Charles, which is obviously a big part of why they're dealing with him in a lot firmer way than obviously the late Queen did, Andrew being a favourite effectively. And unfortunately, because we live under a monarchy, we're all dragged into it. So it's one of those things where sosuddenly it becomes a political issue.
Well, that's
suddenly
it. On one level, I don't care. I don't care where Prince Andrew. I really object to the fact that his building he's been allowed to live in all this time is on the Crown estate, and they've got a duty of care to us as taxpayers to actually maximise the rent. But also, this Windsor estate is just full of these huge big mansions just being handed out to you and here and there. But then if you say you can't get a normal job, I don't know who would want to employ Prince Andrew other than some dodgy Kazakhstan billionaire or the Emir of Kuwait or wherever. I mean, but really, what can he do of any use? He was a hero in the Falklands, no doubt at all, but what has he done usefully for us since then? Okay, he was a trade envoy. No, he just has a title. He just had a title that meant that people would want to they would turn up. It was that simple.
And the trade envoy thing could be something where the sort of next Prince Andrew scandal stuff. There was a good piece in the Sunday Times there about just how little he was actually pulling in for UK PLC, but how many private jets and helicopters and parties in far-flung places with interesting people.
But also some question marks over the benefits that he personally got, because he seems to have an awful lot of money for someone with no obvious source of income.
Because formerly he wasn't paid for that trade envoy role, but I think we all understand maybe there were other sources of money that came
there's
along with
more
it, and houses being bought by foreign dignitaries at way above the market price. There's all these things going on, and I think this is the issue: is that this is the problem with I think the kind of the monarchists and the royalists have to contend with, is the fact that because the Queen was so beloved across the country, and I think even Republicans, many of us had a lot of respect for her.
To be fair to the late Queen, she did put duty and country above anything else.
Exactly, but that was always going to, as soon as she passed away, it was always going to raise big questions. First and foremost, because Charles obviously does not command that level of public respect or popularity. There was a bit of a bounce afterwards, as far as I think people felt sympathy for him, and he's obviously taking on the mantle of the role, and that brings a certain authority to you, but that's already starting to dip. And then also the whole Prince Andrew issue, which, as one person described it in the papers over the weekend, was like a kind of unexploded bomb left for King Charles's reign.
So fair point that Kinsey Schofield made, though, that actually it was very unfair for them to leave this for the King.
Exactly, because it could have been something that, the Barnacle was off the boat before this even began. But it's a reminder, isn't it, that this is the nature of monarchy. Just because one individual in that family line was brilliant doesn't mean any of her children are going to be able to step up.
But as I keep pointing out to people in the morning, is you can't complain if you get a dud.
Yeah.
Because that's what you've signed up to.
That's how it works.
That's what you signed up to. Well, if we get a dud when we elect a leader, then we get rid of them. That's what we do with prime ministers. We get rid of them.
No more grace and favour homes and things. Those
talking of duds, everyone in this current Labour government, let's talk about the stuff that's actually impacting our lives and how we live and our actual homes, in terms of local hotel in my area is now an asylum hotel. People having to live next door to people who are illegally entered this country, paid people, smugglers. Do they have a criminal record? Where are they from? Ooh, we don't know. We have no idea, and yet free to walk on our streets, being funded by us. Lots of outcry over this, of them being wherever they are in houses of multiple occupancy. Hotels being a big focus. We've got some 32,000 people in hotels, and yet the government says they're going to get them out originally by 2029. Now they're talking by the end of the year. And the latest announcement is two different army barracks, one in Scotland and Inverness, and one in East Sussex in the south of England. From next month, they're going to house small boat migrants, but it's 900 of them. Right? So is it slightly more than the BB Stockholm? Was that 400? I think when that BB Stockholm barge opened, I think on that very day more than 400 arrived when they opened it, and it didn't last for long. Got 100,000 in the backlog, got 32,000 in hotels. I mean, the question I'm asking everyone is, what do you think should be done with the migrants who are in hotels? Does this in any way provide a solution to the problem?
Oh no, of course not. It's just window dressing. It's just the attempt to look as if you're doing something. I mean, just this year, we've already beat last year's total in a calendar year.
Come on, for arrivals.
Small boats arrivals.
Come on, let's give a little bit of a round of applause.
Since Labour came to power, I mean, it was back in August that they went over 50,000 in the space of about a year of them being in office. So the idea that, we've got 900 places and maybe we'll get it up to 10,000. Again, you're barely touching the sides of the last year, let alone people who will still be kind of caught up in the system and still waiting for responses and still lodging legal complaints.
And these numbers,
we all know this. It's enormous.
They are huge numbers.
And that's because people in this debate will often say, well, illegal migration is tiny in relation to legal migration. Why are you focusing on it? These are still huge numbers, and also
by the way, the legal migration is a problem too, but in a different way.
People are concerned about both. You can walk and chew gum at the same time, but also the issue of illegal migration in particular, and is that you're really kind of selecting potentially for some real wrong-uns. If you're basically saying, if you can pay a people smuggler and are willing to make that dangerous crossing, you can come here and it'll be quite difficult to get rid of you. Yes, there'll be some people who are trying to take advantage of that because they do just want to come and work and get on and whatever. But there's also going to be a lot of people who are just fleeing charges in other countries, like the guy who got done for sending death threats to Nigel Farage, or because...
Who had, what, 15 convictions
15,
in Sweden?
17, something like that.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
this
what's 15 or 17 between friends?
No, exactly. And there are so many cases like that. If you have porous borders, you can't count on who's going to nip through them.
And again,
so
we know
obvious.
Robert Jenner, the Shadow Justice Secretary, he has pointed out when he was in the Home Office that he was certainly told by security forces that they know at least 5 people. I mean, come on, that would touch who arrived who were terrorists, who were basically. But we know one of the policies with ISIS, when ISIS was being basically shut down and destroyed in Syria and Iraq, they basically just started making their way west through Europe. The plan was to, have your terror cell back here, and many say that, London is the epicentre for this. It is absolutely mind-blowing. We also talked a bit earlier about this, but a charity bankrolled by the Home Office has been highlighted by The Sun, using taxpayers' cash, putting a positive spin on migration to school children. Migrant Help is the name of the organisation. I know. I wonder what they do. They actually had a multi-million-pound contract, and I mean a 10-year, £235 million deal back in 2019, which has now ballooned to £385 million. I mean, this is a huge sum of money to advise asylum seekers and help them access housing. Bearing in mind that most of the people they're referring to as asylum seekers are actually illegal arrivals. Most people have no right to be here. Don't believe all that nonsense that most people on appeal win. No. Seriously, they don't win. What happens is they just basically get granted leave to remain because they can't get rid of them. Because they don't know where they're from, or they haven't got to deal with that country. So when you're told most of these people do get to stay, these people have already been rejected by Germany and Belgium and Sweden and everything. They know that they're dodgy, and I'm sorry, I just do not accept this. But this charity is going into schools now. They have a nationwide schools programme paid for by you and me to have our children indoctrinated about basically how great it is to basically offer free assemblies and workshops and exercise, asking kids to imagine they have 5 minutes to flee their home, and basically to talk about encouraging people to have a positive attitude and awareness of migration. I mean, but we're not talking about people arriving here who've just fled their home and being bombed by Assad, in Syria, in the day. We're talking about people leaving France.
Yeah. Have you not got sympathy for people trying to flee France?
I often flee France at the end of a very long ski holiday when I've done too much après, and then I am fleeing France. Yes.
Not usually via the dinghy, I presume.
Not usually via the dinghy. Yeah. I don't know if my tummy would cope with that after the excesses.
That's the only thing stopping it. It's quite
most people
it's
in this country,
quite a high price as well for quite a low grade mode of transport as well. £1,000.
I mean, I'm amazed given the lack of security at airports now that these people can't just get flights over. To be honest with you,
there is that. But this charity though, it's a reminder that there are so many people who are, shall we say, benefiting from the dysfunction of the government. It's kind of, the asylum thing's kind of become a bit of a grift for various different people. So you've got these big charities which, because the government wants to just do things quickly, or they don't think about it, they don't bother to read the contracts that they themselves sign, they end up giving huge amounts of money to people to run a helpline or to do whatever. Meanwhile, some of that money is used, or at least that organisation is going into schools and propagandising to the nation's youth in a way that no one asked them to. You've then got the whole asylum hotels issue. There's obviously the big companies who have always been, questions have been asked about how effective they are and reputable they are, but the Sercos, the so on and so forth, who do loads of kind of outsourcing for the government. You've also got places like the Britannia Hotel. That was where the Canary Wharf protests were taking place.
You went along to some of those.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one because that's
as a journalist.
No, exactly. I wasn't a participant, but there was a hotel chain which was winning all the wrong kinds of awards: worst customer service, people constantly hating on it. 2020 comes around. Obviously, the business is completely cratered by lockdown, and then they find a way to make a virtue out of that by taking all this. So it's one of those things where this issue, the only people who are really benefiting from it, in my view, are a lot of these companies and these failing businesses who, because the government is so dysfunctional, because it doesn't bother to work out if it's even getting value for money as well, they can get an awful lot of money out of the public purse for presiding over this crisis.
And there are a lot of people making a lot of money. And when you look at the sums, you're not talking about a few £1,000s here and there. You are talking about multi-million pound, and in some cases multi-billion pound contracts. We know the cost of housing asylum seekers and illegal migrants is now ballooned to 15 billion a year. I mean, that's That's a lot of money. That's the sort of, part of the savings that the Chancellor's going to try and get by taxing us all a lot more in a month's time in the budget. But, we could just not have to be housing a load of people who've got no right to be here. There's a thought. Inge, we also want to talk about the migrant case that involves the Epping sex offender, of course, Calamity Lammy, as he's been dubbed now. David Lammy, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, take questions in the Commons and give a statement. There's going to be an independent inquiry, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Personal error, an individual's error probably, but it is interesting. The Reform UK MP Danny Kruger, he went over from the Tories to Reform recently. He and Reform's head of policy Zia Youssef holding a press conference another day. Another Reform press conference, really. This time it's on the civil service reform we were talking about earlier. And Zia Youssef has just said if anyone was in any doubt that Britain needed reform, then you needn't look any further than the Epping migrant case. And this is the thing. I don't think anyone's even surprised by this. I mean, the Epping migrant case emerged on Friday after on Thursday, the one-in, one-out deal emerged when somebody had returned and then come here, been sent back, and then returned, and now we're going to have to send it back again. And by the way, we pay for all of this. Absolute laughable, doing the hokey-cokey migrant. And then the next day, it got even more mad, a high-profile illegal migrant who had sexually assaulted a 14-year-old, sparking all those protests outside, not just the Bell Hotel at Epping, but across the country, as you mentioned, in Canary Wharf and elsewhere. That he was accidentally let out when he was going for about an hour and a half outside the prison. I think I'm supposed to be deported. Where am I supposed to go?
No, and the fact that it fell to him to try and correct that mistake tells you everything you need to know, don't you? I mean, this is a man who should never have been let in and who should never have been let out, and yet this is the British state now. It's so useless and it's so dysfunctional that it's become a genuine menace to public safety, both in terms of not being able to control a border, but also not being able to run your own criminal justice system in an effective fashion. So it's one of those things where, even though human error does happen, and it's been happening an awful lot in the prison service. And
it's doubled. The 262 people have been wrongly released as opposed to 125, 130 last year.
Exactly, which is surely, more than what you should expect. So human error does happen, but I think this has become symbolic of that broader issue, which is that nothing works, and that nothing works to the detriment of the safety of the people who live here. And as long as people have that in front and centre and in their minds, I think Reform as the kind of change agents party in the next election will do very well. And
public safety is absolutely the key. And again, we keep being told, it's very racist to say these men are potential sex offenders. Well, apart from all the ones who are. I'm not saying every single person arriving on our shores illegally is a sex offender, but we know they're a criminal. We already know that bit. But if they're coming from countries, as we know they are, which are either war-torn or have the very least medieval attitudes towards justice, towards women and girls, gay men and women, and all the rest of it. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know why we would be surprised. Sweden, Germany have both had widespread campaigns, literally having posters and TV campaigns and things to actually explain to their huge migrant arrivals, because how's that worked out for them? Really badly since 2015. The public is very clear about that. You see what's happening in their politics. But basically the massive rise in crime, huge explosion in sex crimes in Sweden, off the scale compared to there were virtually no reported rapes in the capital until the mass arrival of migrants from a particular part of the world. People can complain about this. This is borne out by the official statistics in terms of where people are from, and the fact that you've got a load of young men arriving who have completely different attitudes, and they've had to have these campaigns basically saying you're not allowed to touch women. You can't. It's not acceptable for you to touch women just because they're not covered up. They're literally having to tell these men this because they don't know it. And
it's weird that people, in the West, in the countries that have been affected by this migration, pretend not to know that this is the case either. Many people will go on.
All cultures are the same, Tom.
And again, it's not to say that people can't integrate. It's not to say that there aren't things that change over time, of course. It's not to say that you shouldn't, it's not that they're any less human beings. They just have different attitudes, and we tend to think that our attitudes are superior. But, people have gone on, maybe a little weekend away to Marrakesh. If you're a young woman not covered up, you know what happens. It's one of those things where we kind of have to pretend that these things aren't the case when it comes to migration. And it's similarly, as you say, excuse me, it's not to say that you damn everyone with, or you tar everyone with one brush, but in the same way that you don't leave your door open at night, it doesn't mean...
I think that everyone's a burglar.
Exactly. You don't do that because you don't trust your neighbours. You don't do that because you think everyone out there is potentially meaning to do you harm. It's just you're allowing the one or two individuals who wouldn't mind taking your stuff or doing you harm a very easy go of it. That's exactly what you do when you don't control your borders either. This is so obvious to, I think, anyone with even a modicum of common sense.
And again, this is the same reason of why, for instance, women don't want men who claim to be women in their bedrooms, in their toilets, in their changing rooms. Not because every single trans person is a sex offender or every single man is a sex offender. It's because too many of them are, and therefore we're playing the odds. And also we don't know which ones are, which ones aren't, but we can make a really good guess that the average woman isn't going to be a sex offender, so we're safe with them. I mean, we do this we do this at nightclubs. For goodness sake, nightclubs have policies. No stag do's. They now say no hen do's, ladies. We've been upping our game on that front. Well done in terms of vomiting everywhere and causing mayhem in a nightclub. Large groups of men not allowed into a nightclub. Without women, because they know that men in large groups tend to behave more badly than men who are with women. Okay, they play the odds. We play the odds in criminality all the time. But when I walk down the street, someone said to me, I remember years back, so if you see a bunch of and they said, black youths wearing hoodies and stuff on the street corner, you're going to cross the street. I'm like, of course I would. But I would do the same whether they were white youths or black youths, and I would do the same whether they were girls or boys now, because frankly a load of our teenagers are feral from every background, gender and everything. So I mean, you play the odds. I mean, and that's what you do in everyday life. That's what women do every day when they walk down the street at night. And it's what you do when you say, oh, who shall I have look after my child? Oh, someone who's just left prison for a sex offence but says that they're absolutely not a danger. Or that nice young woman with no record. Oh, I don't know. Which shall I go for? You play the odds, and we're playing the odds really badly with our young women's and our girls' lives by having a load of, fighting age young men from largely, let's be honest, medieval societies where, women have no rights, where a woman who is not covered up is basically fair game. And I've been in countries like Egypt many, many times, and I know the way I am treated, or the way my daughter is treated when there is a man with us, when my husband is with us, is completely different. It's completely different, and the same member of staff in a Western hotel. And I'm sorry, people can go, oh, that's terrible. Sorry, I eventually had to say, on a day that my husband was off on a scuba boat without us, I literally had to say, leave us alone. Leave us alone. We actually, we could, and I don't have to do that in London. I don't. But anyway, look, Danny Kruger has been speaking, the Reform MP who came over from the Tories at this press conference about their latest reforms. He says, basically, we will be ready, he says, on day one. When Nigel Farage walks into number 10, I want him to sit the civil servants down and tell them what to do. We'll have new civil service legislation ready to go, drafted from day one. We'll bring more expertise and advice from outside Westminster to help in Whitehall. We'll reform the civil service code. And under a reformed government, the civil service is under notice, and the number of civil servants will fall from 500,000. He hasn't given a number what it would fall to, but it's massively ballooned since about 10 years ago. We'll take back control of the Whitehall machine. We'll not let bogus and higher appeals get in the way of Parliament. And so he's setting up advisory groups, and if you want to get involved, get involved. I mean, I've got to be honest with you, what's not to like about this? I'd support any government saying they were going to do this.
No, exactly, and it's one of those things which is encouraging because they are now attracting figures like Danny Kruger, who just give a slightly different flavour, who have a hell of a lot of
sort of
experience.
Backbone.
Yeah, and it's not, I don't want to fetishise that too much anyway, because it sounds almost like you do need that kind of more populist campaigning element, but they've got that in spades already. I think this is an interesting shift that is taking place, where it's like we need to do more policy, we need to be able to present it credibly. Obviously all of these plans will be tested to destruction if they ever get a chance to run the country, but it's still one of those things where it's hard to see many people getting too upset about this. I think everyone understands that the British state just doesn't work. And that the civil service
because we live here,
among
we
it.
Can see it, eyes and ears. 11:25 is the time where we're going to go to a quick break. Then take your calls, 0344 499 1000. Then we're going to talk to a Labour representative about what is going to happen in the budget. Don't worry, if you don't own a £2 million home, you're probably okay. Or will you be? This is Talk.
Whoever signed off on this needs to be sacked, right?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you don't know? You mean that wasn't a mistake?
Yes, obviously it shouldn't have been released. However,
fire them
somewhere in administration, from the courts, the paperwork, I can see that he should not have been released.
Yeah, I think that might be the case, Sam.
Violence went up in our prisons.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Carl's done just that. He's in Liverpool. Carl, I wonder what you want to talk about.
Hi, Julie.
Hello.
All right, well, it's just about this 15 billion on the hotels and stuff.
Well, hey, come on. What's 15 billion between friends? Come on.
Well, yeah, friends and enemies.
What are you making a fuss about, man? It's only 15 billion.
I don't know if you've looked online and seen on Twitter, some remembrance parades being cancelled due to health and safety. We all know it's about budgets and stuff like that. It's got nothing to do about it. So
you have to have like this public liability insurance, which costs fortunes, so councils cancel them.
Do you know what, Julia? I go to them. I've gone to every single one since I've been retired from the military, and you meet all the same people there. And I've had conversations today and yesterday about how disgusting it is. But we're giving 15 billion, and in the week we're giving 111 million to India or something for contraception.
Yeah. What the hell?
I'm sorry, but where does this lunacy stop? Well, they must say these things out loud and think, God, we sound absolutely like morons, like we haven't got a clue what we're doing. But the British people are funding everything.
Yep.
And where does it stop?
I know.
You know, where does it stop? Do you know what, Julia? Just to go off topic, I took my children last night to the city centre. I never really go in there, and I went for something to eat with my brother and my two eldest, and it was a lovely meal. Went for a little walk around the city, and my city centre has changed.
Oh God, Liverpool city centre is stunning now, though. It's stunning.
But it is lovely, Julia. But demographically and culturally, it is gone. It is gone. There is foreign kids roaming the street, gangs. I mean, it is just gone. And we're paying for this. We're paying for it all. And yet we can't even house our veterans. We can't put remembrance parades on because health and safety permits. I mean, it's just scandalous. And every day I wake up and I listen to your shows and I get that little bit more angry, but I need to be informed.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, a lot of people just want to put their heads in the sand. And again, what the Labour government wants, and frankly, I think what the last Tory government want, was if we all stop talking about it, it will go away. It's not going away. We can see it on our streets, what's going on. We can see the stats in the courts about, crime by, illegal migrants and the Epping migrant and numerous other cases. And we want it dealt with. And moving them around from, geography and the kind of housing they're in ain't the issue. Carl, I feel your pain, my love. I really do. Thank you so much for that call. Alan is in Salford, wants to have his say. Alan, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
You look a lot more happy today and settled.
Oh.
But
when did I not? I don't know what's going on.
Normally you're irate, but you're not today. So,
do you know what? You'd be surprised by this. I'm actually genuinely a really happy person. Just doesn't come across on there.
I'm usually irate anyway, but 2 quick points. On the civil service, public sector, the only people that should be getting government money should be the army, the police, probably all the rest. Everybody else gets public money, which is national health and everything. Civil servants, they should be given all new contracts. I mean, radically change this. Why should we be paying for their pensions? We're adding 16 or 17% to each pension of these public sector people. And private sector people like myself, I've got a small pension. I work for that and paid into it. These people are not paying into it.
Some of them, it's like 20% of their, isn't it, doctors? 20% of their salary goes in.
Yeah, but some of these civil servants, they're retiring, some of these civil servants on 2.5 grand a month and 3 grand a month.
Yeah.
You know, it's scandalous. But that's me, civil service. I'd radically change it. The only people is the army, the police.
I mean, certainly a load of these charities who are doing work which is not work. Well, you know, I think, you know, a cancer, you know, a hospice charity, yeah. But although, again, shouldn't we be funding the hospices out of national health care? But, you know, but I mean, the charities are probably running more efficiently. But an awful lot of this other stuff, this campaigning, lobbying stuff, we're paying, our taxpayers' money is being paid to the government to then use, you know, do loads of paperwork to pay these people to then lobby the government on our. I mean, it's frankly, it's just a grift. And again, it's just more jobs for the lanyard classes.
Billions of pounds. But the next one's about immigration. Now, we've got 6 islands up in the Outer Hebrides, massive islands, and we've got plenty of building workers who have been put on the dole because of this government this year. Send them up there, fence it off, put the tents in.
Off you go.
A lot of portaloos, put hundreds of portaloos, showers, and take them off the boat by Navy ship.
And take them back. So, look, thing is, Alan, I don't understand why we can't get the migrants themselves to this, because as we know, they're all engineers and highly skilled people getting off those boats, right?
Exactly. But I'm saying you should be using the Navy. And, you know, they've got big enough ships. It's only, I've worked it out, at 35 mile an hour, so many knots. It's only 6 hours. They don't need to touch the shores. Just get them up there and get them into these camps.
The main thing is, send them somewhere. No disrespect to those in the Outer Hebrides, but, you know, somewhere a little bit colder and windier and less welcoming, with rather less job of black market job opportunities. That might be part of the answer. Alan, really appreciate that call. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, coming back to you, just on like the civil service contracts and basically relooking all of this stuff and the cuts that people are wanting. We again, this tinkering here and there is not going to fly. It's got to be something bigger. And Elon Musk didn't really deliver when it came to it on Doge in America. But again, that money is talking in their political world more than ours. But we've just seen Milei, in the Argentinian president, really, well, not he was elected, but he's had huge cuts. I mean, huge cuts, massive cuts to try and get his country back on track. And then all the predictions from, of course, the experts saying that he was, you know, massive public disappointment about this and anger, and he was going to lose parliamentary elections. Huge majority for his party. That tells you that, you know, the public get it.
They do, and I also think they're up for being convinced. People know that things aren't working. I've been quite struck, and I don't think it's necessarily shown up in opinion polls, but I think it will start to, how even on some of the things that we used to think economically or socially were kind of sacred cows, like the NHS or whatever, people are starting to think this is really not working. Like, this is really almost becoming an insult to us and a danger to us. And I think the same goes for the economy. I think people, to be honest, I think even if you're, you know, whether you're more of a kind of, if you're more of a Milei character or you're more of a kind of interventionist character, I think everyone realised there are still deep problems in terms of how the British state is structured, in terms of the waste that exists, in terms of the fact that it seems to do a hell of a lot of the things it shouldn't do, and not very much of the things that it should do. Whether that's, you know, not properly policing the streets, but again, kind of policing our tweets to an extreme degree. There's all these kind of different ways in which
that was a link into his new documentary on Spiked.
Exactly. Think before you post.
Think before you post. Out now.
Good places, but. Yeah, that sense that something radically needs to change. This isn't purely an issue of money; it's an issue of priorities. It's an issue of waste.
They're not going to be able to fob the public off anymore. We're done.
I think, the public are up for an argument with these things.
Absolutely. 11:37 is the time. Well, I'll put some of this to our next guest in just a couple of moments. Labour councillor Sebastian Selleck. We're also going to be talking about what the hell is waiting for us in that budget that Rachel Reeves is going to deliver next month. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:40 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go to my next guest, Sebastian Salak. He's a Labour councillor and commentator and joins us to talk about, the horrors that await us. No, not on Halloween, but next month in the budget. A very, very good morning to you, Sebastian.
Good morning, Julia. Good to see you.
Well, lovely to see you. So, how bad is it going to be? Because we're hearing an awful lot about mansion tax. Now, most of us don't live in a £2 million home, but will there be implications for the rest of us? But also the idea of this productivity downgrade from the Offices for Budget Responsibility, suggesting that actually the Chancellor may have to tinker around with taxes affecting ordinary working people.
Yeah, it's that weird time of year, isn't it? It's budget advent almost, where every day leading up, you open the advent calendar and there's another rumour, there's another potential tax rise coming your way. The reality is we just don't know, and we don't know what's going to happen on, the 26th of November, just under a month away now. The reality is, there could be tax rises. Who knows? The fact of the matter is...
No, there will be tax rises. There will be tax rises. The point is who they're going to hit. But also, crucially, will they actually bring in more money, or will they do so much damage to the economy that actually the government takes a bigger share of a smaller pie?
Yeah, you're right. And I think the government has been really clear about growth and that being a very firm part of its mission. The question is whether those, as you say, whether those tax policies will get it there. I like the idea of the richest paying a little bit more. I think it's fair, especially in times like this where, look, everybody is struggling. And I think if you are fortunate enough and lucky enough and capable enough to have made a bit of money in your life, it is almost your duty to your fellow countrymen to be giving a little bit more.
But the rich, I'm not here to defend the rich people. I'm sure they can afford it, but they are already paying more. Top rate of tax over 150k is 45%. Plus, you add in national insurance. For a lot of that, they're actually paying more than half of their incomes in tax. We know that the tax burden, it's very, very clear on independent analysis that the tax burden has gone up massively on the top 10% of earners at a time when it has gone down actually relative for people on more ordinary incomes. When we say we want the rich to pay more, of course the rich should pay more. But how much more is fair?
Yeah, and look, I can't give you a number on that, but I think the broad principles...
Well, what's a little bit more? An extra 1 or 2%? What, you put a bit more on income tax? What are you saying?
Well, I think if you're really rich, if there is another penny on the top rate of income tax, for example, not necessarily a policy I'm advocating, but you're going to feel that a lot less if you are really rich. And I'm talking about, multiple six figures. That's not really going to change your quality of life. You're not going to go and start looking at prices in the supermarket.
The trouble is, are there that many people who are earning those salaries that's going to bring in the sort of numbers we want? Because what the people want is, let's face it, what the public wants is to have really low taxes and great public services that someone else pays for. That's, for all the polling, that's what people want. They want their taxes to go down, put the taxes up on the rich, or on some nefarious way of finding the money, but great public services. But you know as well as I do that if you look at the continent, you look at the countries with great public services, really can deliver on health and education and the like, they are funded by much higher taxes on the average worker.
Yeah, you're completely right. Half of my family is Danish, and I see that at work when I go to Denmark. People pay really high taxes, but they get a lot for it as well. And I think that is the deal. If you're going to raise taxes, you have to make the case for, well, you're going to get childcare, you're going to get free school meals, you're going to get everything else in return. And it feels like a good deal for normal working people.
But we don't feel that because we're paying more and more tax, and actually our public services are getting worse.
Well, I think that speaks to the crunch that we're in where, and I say this all the time, we never really got over the 2008 crisis because we voted in a government in 2010 who cut and cut and cut to the bone. I don't think there's anything else to cut anymore.
I hate to tell you that the austerity that George Osborne brought in as Chancellor in 2010 was actually the same plan Alistair Darling, the then Labour Chancellor, had planned.
Sure, I'm not a fan of it, whoever decided to...
What should they have done? Just spent more money that we didn't have?
I think there was scope to borrow there when interest rates were much lower. Now they are high.
We borrowed loads when interest rates were low. And you know what happened to interest rates? They went up. And then we couldn't afford to pay the money back, which is why we're paying £110 billion a year, simply paying the interest to service our debt, not paying any of it off. I mean, who would have thought the interest rates would go up again, eh?
No, you're right. And I think, I was a business journalist for many years, and there was that general belief that these beautiful times of low interest will never end. And of course they have. And here we are at, what are we?
People in the city, the experts in the city, what got us into this mess in 2008. So forgive me for not trusting their or your judgment on these things.
No, you're right. It was
you keep saying that, but then you want us to tax everyone more. Here's the thing. You tax very rich people more. They're not like us. They leave.
Well, you say that, and I just haven't seen the data on it. There was a lot of stories floating around on that, and you dig into it, and it turns out that they're looking at people's LinkedIn pages and where they're saying that they work. It's just not scientific. So I've seen no evidence that people are leaving.
There's plenty of evidence from the London housing market. There's plenty of evidence from every country that has done this, that people leave. France did it. François Hollande, when he was president, he introduced a massively high income tax on rich people, and thousands upon thousands of people left. And those are the people who are paying the huge sums of money that we need. Here's the thing. What about the mansion tax? Because, again, there's this view, well, people should pay more. And certainly, the council tax, I think, my council tax is probably the same as Buckingham Palace's. You think, well, that doesn't seem reasonable. But the idea of 1% of the value of your home over £2 million being taxed, the reality is, look, 2 million quid, you are looking at, you've got tennis courts and an indoor and outdoor pool. If you're in Staffordshire, 2 million quid will buy you that. In large parts of London, someone could have bought a home they scraped and saved for. They've worked 2 families and mortgage, desperately trying to make ends meet for years. They've bought a home. It's gone up in value because of our mad housing market. It's now could possibly hit 2 million. And it could be a 4-bedroom house in a normal terrace street, but in a quite nice part of town. Are you thinking that they've got, out of taxed income, a spare £10,000 a year or whatever if their home goes up in value?
Yeah, it's a really hard one to comment on because we don't know the mechanics of this policy. We haven't seen it in full. Are we talking about going after people who've already bought their home 20 years ago and it's just gone up and up and up in value and it's crossed that 2 million threshold? Or are we talking about rich people coming in now, dropping that 2 million and then being asked to pay a little bit more? I think you're talking about 2 very different camps of people there. And if someone has the money for £2 million house now, they're going into it with that knowledge. It comes back to that idea that you mentioned as well of people leaving. And I think we really talk down Britain and talk down London when we say things like that, because there are so many things that draw people to Britain that aren't just the amount of money they have to pay. I was stunned the other day. I read a news article. Apparently Ryan Gosling's moved here now. Is one example, but come on, one of the big stars.
Relatively near me, but not near enough, unfortunately.
Well, there we go. I hear he's a hit at the school gates. But choosing to come here and make London.
Well, and that's it. And again, but by the way, the Remainers in particularly in Labour, they were talking about how Brexit would hit our city of London and things like that. No, people weren't all going to move to Frankfurt. You can walk across Frankfurt in 20 minutes. I've been to Frankfurt. People aren't going to move to Frankfurt where they'd be living in London. But we've got Rachel Reeves apparently has said today that Rachel Reeves has blamed Brexit for pushing up inflation, addressing an investment summit in Saudi Arabia. It's always Brexit's to blame, isn't it, as opposed to really rubbish government policies.
Well, that's the curious thing. For a long time for Labour, it wasn't. And we went through that period of, my God, we've just got to make this work. We've got to grasp the nettle.
When did that happen?
Out of this.
I must have missed that memo.
Oh, it's been the narrative for many years now.
Okay, sorry, are you kidding me? Because I remember the man who's a leader of your party for 3.5 years trying to actually prevent Brexit from happening and saying all our woes were related to it.
Yes, but that was before he became leader of the opposition, then the Prime Minister. And then you're in charge. Then you've got to make decisions, haven't you? And, we certainly haven't marched back into the customs union or the single market. Well, I mean, I personally think there may be a case for that in time.
There we go.
Because we have, I voted to remain, and I think it was the right thing to do to leave, because it was what people asked to do, and it would have been in all sorts of mess if we'd gone against the will of the people. But in time, we may just feel that the economic pain, the daily grind is too much.
Of having to run our own affairs, always too much for Sebastian Selleck. I'm going to have to leave it there. He's a Labour councillor and commentator. Tom, I'm going to give you a chance to come back on this after midday, because I'm going to go to a break. And up there, next, we're going to be talking to Guido Fawkes' Adam Cherry about reform of the civil service and just how much needs to be cut. That's up next. This is Talk.
self-harm.
This Justice Secretary could not deport the only small boat migrant who who tried to be deported. Yes. Having been mistakenly released, Hadushka Batu came back to prison asking to be deported, not once, not twice, but 5 times. But he was turned away. Calamity Lammy strikes again.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:53 is it? And boy, have I got a treat for you after midday involving Jeremy Corbyn. You want to stay tuned for that. Right now, let's talk about, the reforms that we've had announced from Danny Kruger and Zia Youssef of the Reform UK Party about what they're going to do if and when they get elected. Adam Cherry is editorial director at Guido Fawkes and joins us now. Very, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Well, I mean, interesting announcements from Danny Kruger. You know, he went over from the Conservatives, and he, alongside Zia Youssef, is speaking. I mean, every single day there's a Reform press conference, usually making the news, but basically saying, well, day one we'll be ready. Nigel Farage, he says when, not if, when Nigel Farage walks into number 10, I want him to sit the civil servants down and tell them what to do. New civil service legislation, bringing in expertise and advice, but basically putting the elected representatives in charge as opposed to the civil service. What's not to like?
Yeah, I mean, so all of that I think is pretty welcome. So you have a new ministerial code, you have a new civil service code. What does that mean? Well, if you're going to pitch this to the layman, to the voter, you would say this is to enable reform to work their agenda through Whitehall and overcome the institutional resistance that they may face, given that there's a sort of groupthink mentality within Whitehall that may try to thwart their plans. What I was slightly disappointed by, to be honest, was it was pretty threadbare on detail. I mean, you've now actually got Reform and the Tories singing directly from the same hymn sheet on this specific topic. It was only about 3 weeks ago at the Conservative Party conference that they announced that they would cut £8 billion annually. They would save £8 billion by reducing the civil service by about 130,000. You didn't even hear that level of detail from Reform today. It was a bit more vague than that.
I kind of prefer parties to be vague. If they don't have the numbers, don't just make them up.
Well, fine, I suppose there's an argument for that, but Reform do have a broader problem of being light on detail anyway, and this is continuing that trend. You can argue, again, that it's early days, and in fact, they did argue that they need time to refine this over the next 3 or 4 years, and they're inviting people, experts, to join them on that journey. Fine. The broader point is true, I think, like I said just a moment ago, that, look, the civil service is now at over 500,000 in terms of its headcount, which is absolutely gigantic. If you think back to, so that's, since Brexit, as was mentioned in that speech, but also particularly since the pandemic, it has boomed. But has the civil service, has the government machine, does it really work better for you now than it did 10 years ago? Of course not. Of course not.
That's it seems to have got worse, so more people. But when we talk about the civil service, who do we mean? We don't just mean those people who refuse to go into their offices in Whitehall. We're talking about people in every local council, and how far does this spread?
Well, I mean, I think much of this is concentrated, certainly with Reform's plan today, it's concentrated in the more senior civil servants in London, in Whitehall. In fact, they want to bring back many of those civil servants working either from home or in other parts of the country into Whitehall, so they're all in the same place, and they'll make some savings by closing some of those external office buildings down. Fine. In terms of the overall savings that will be made to the taxpayer, it's a small figure, but nonetheless
but having everyone in one place so they can talk to each other, not a bad thing. And we know that lots of the agencies, when they have moved out of London, they moved to Newport, I think the Office for National Statistics, and they just lose a load of people who say, well, I don't want to up sticks, take my whole family.
Definitely. I think there is a strong argument to be made for that. And the interesting thing here, aside from like I said, no precise figures, but the interesting thing I noticed was they want the civil servants, the senior civil servants, to be directly accountable to ministers. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means you can sack them if they're useless. At the moment, in fact, I was speaking to a former minister just last week who said that this argument that you can't do things in Whitehall is wrong. You can't sack them, but you can move them around. And I thought to myself, a bit odd. You can't sack them, and you think that's fine. You can just shuffle the deck chairs. I mean, if the civil service is exploding to over 500,000, how many times can you do this before you've got too many people doing not enough? So if ministers are actually responsible and can sack those who aren't meeting the mark, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
but again,
absolutely. But there's two things though. One is like the Elon Musk Doge, that email. Back. Tell us 5 things you've done this week. I've said the story before, and I had an old editor, and he arrived. And he said to me, "Hello, I'm X. Who are you? What do you do?" And they would say, "Oh, I'm the deputy picture editor on London's Diary." It was like, "So what do you do?" And it's like, I have to basically source 3 photos of famous people a day. Really? That's not a job. Next. But like what? Don't tell me your job title. What do you do? It's like people having Zoom meetings, 45-minute Zoom meeting. What is the purpose of this meeting? What are we going to achieve? If we're not going to achieve anything in it, why are we bothering to have this? And why are you CCing everyone on an email? I mean, the reality is there's a hell of a lot of people who are in civil service jobs doing absolutely sod all day.
Well, exactly. I agree. I mean, we cover this on Guido quite a lot.
Yes,
there are so many examples. I think we did one last week. There was an example. In fact, it made the national press when the civil service was revealed in that report published about the Home Office. So they were having listening circles. So everyone sits in a circle and holds hands and thinks about how to thwart government policy because it's too much to bear and it makes them feel stressed out.
I mean, genuinely, but also, you're a servant. You don't have to agree with public policy. It's not your job whether you agree or disagree. You're a servant. We need to bring that back in, and absolutely accountability to ministers. I wonder, though, I mean, reform would need such a mandate to be able to get that through. It would be really interesting to see how they could, and how quickly they could get that through and how quickly they could seize control. But if they do have a public mandate, then perhaps a lot more of a moral case for it. Really good to talk to you, Adam Cherry. Do come on again, editorial director at Guido Fawkes. It's coming up to the top of the hour. I want to get Tom Slater's thoughts on that and indeed on what we're expecting in the budget. Up next, we're also going to be talking to the child abuse lawyer Peter Garston about, the grooming gangs inquiry. Has it collapsed? Has it fallen apart? And is actually London the last great grooming gang scandal to be uncovered? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything of the show, why would you? Letter from Mum, please. You know the rules. You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. Never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, Nigel Farage has warned that London may be the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. He accused Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, of failing victims. And he's accused the mayor of denying the existence of grooming gangs in the capital after police chiefs said they would review thousands of cases. We're going to talk to a child abuse lawyer, Peter Garson, about that in just a few moments. Also, Nigel Farage suggested that Parliament takes control of the crisis hit inquiry into child sexual abuse after a victim who quit his panel said it was rigged and they wanted it to fail. Plus, men with suspected prostate cancer will be able to get a diagnosis on the NHS within a day under game-changing new trials. The question is, will they be able to get treatment sooner? Because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Plus, it's been revealed that the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, discussed the consequences of the China spy trial going ahead at a Whitehall meeting just 2 days before the case collapsed. This is the first time in evidence which was given to MPs about the fiasco that senior government officials have confirmed that Jonathan Powell, who seems to have his fingers in everything, discussed the case. So was he implicated in it? Now, that's just a story that will not go away. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Tom Slater is still with me. I'm delighted to say, editor of Spiked Online. Welcome once again to you. I do want to ask you about a couple of stories we've just been talking about, including the civil service. And it ties in with the budget. We were talking about, reform, wanting to reform the civil service and basically cut huge numbers. Tories said this at party conference as well. But also, we've got the budget coming up, huge costs. I mean, every day we talk about, the 50 billion quid going on migrant hotels, the massive burgeoning of the civil service to 500,000 people at the same time. And so all our public sector services, have gone down we're getting less, and it's poor and it's worse quality. And yet we're paying more for all these civil servants who, by the way, have all had pay rises. Thank you very much. I mean, what is going on?
I think it's one of those things where it's the nature of bureaucracy, isn't it? It wants to grow, and it can quite easily become detached from the kinds of incentives that would make sure it's delivering for the people it's supposed to
in the private
deliver
sector.
For. Absolutely, and it's not to say that there are certain things that you can't do under the aegis of the private sector, but at the same time, it's so clear that this is a problem. We've had successive governments now saying that the civil service was an issue. Tony Blair even used to say that he still had the scars on his back from trying to deal with this issue.
Get anything done?
Exactly. It's not just kind of right of centre politicians raging against the blob because they think it's some kind of enemy of their agenda, although that's not totally untrue. It's also the fact that the system is just dysfunctional anyway. Keir Starmer gets into power, who, he appoints a career civil servant in Sue Gray to push through the agenda, to kind of write the agenda, and still they can't do anything. So it shows that this is a burning issue of British politics.
And it's not just a left-right issue, which is frankly scandalous enough. And you remember all those bullying claims against ministers, always Brexiteer ministers, to a man and a woman, but all Brexiteers. And it was very noticeable to me that. And it's just, there's something going on.
Fully grown man claiming he was bullied by pint-sized Priti Patel.
Yeah, exactly. And the issues with Dominic Raab or ordering the same sandwich every day. I mean, I have the same sandwich every day. I go to prayer, I go buy the same sandwich. What's the big deal? Yeah. I mean, it's just weird. I mean, but again, these people don't understand their job. They think somehow they are sort of the last bastions of morality and goodness, protecting us ghastly voters from, same as the BBC, from ourselves. But they genuinely think that. I think it's just really, really, really important we don't have anyone with any power over any of us who think that we need to be protected from ourselves. Unless we have actually, people have got a mental health issue, they need to be sectioned. No, we don't need, you're under 18 and you're a kid and we get to tell you what to do. Yeah, that still works. I don't think it's any business of public servants to be thinking that they know better than us, because the evidence is really clear. The technocrats and the lanyard brigade, they're not very good at running the country because they've been in charge for all these years.
No, exactly. It's not obvious that they have the kind of expertise that is often projected on.
Can't do a contract without.
Precise, as we've seen with the hotels. I mean, that's a complete scandal in and of itself. Also, they tend to be kind of shuffled around from one department to another. I mean, if you look at your average kind of career civil servants, the one that Keir Starmer has been happily appointing to various roles and then losing confidence quite quickly, they bounce around from job to job. How could you possibly, in the same way that kind of ministers do to a certain extent, how could you possibly have that level of proper technical knowledge? If this was just a series of technocrats, experts who were saying, new government comes in like, what do you want to do? We will help you do it. No one would have any issue with it, but that's clearly not what it is.
But also, again, this idea, no, I know you want to do that, but no, we want to do this. And we know that the budget, we know, people always point out, former ministers and the Treasury would always say, oh no, I remember Treasury officials pushing this. They've been pushing this mansion tax, pushing this, pushing that all the way along. They've got certain little projects they want done. And again, there's no evidence these people have any experience in the real world.
No, or any experience of properly delivering. The fact that you were talking earlier on about how difficult it is to move people on in the civil service means that you're just kind of rewarding failure a lot of the time. There's a lot of people who have failed upwards within the civil service. There's a lot of people working hard, etc., etc. Yes. Throat clear. But the point is that clearly the system isn't working because all the incentives are screwed up, and something needs to be done about that, whoever ends up in power.
Absolutely. Well, look, in terms of things that they don't get done, dealing with the grooming gang scandal, because this is off the scale in terms of what's been going on. And a very sort of hard-hitting press conference from Nigel Farage yesterday with Eliane Reynolds, one of the 5 panellists who were grooming survivors who were on that panel which the government had set up to look into the grooming gang scandal, and who should chair the grooming scandal inquiry, who should what the remit should be, and she stood alongside Nigel Farage. Basically said, as far as she's concerned, this is an inquiry that is just not going to work. It's being rigged. The government want it to fail. It can't go ahead. Nigel Farage has suggested that actually Parliament should take over, and he's also criticised the London Mayor Sadiq Khan for basically poo-pooing the idea there are grooming gangs in London, and says London could be the last great grooming gang scandal to be uncovered. Well, let's talk about all this now with child abuse lawyer Peter Garsden, who joins us now. A very, very good afternoon to you, Peter.
Afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Look, you've been working in this field for many, many years and dealing with the horrors that these young women and also young men in other cases have had to go through. Let's talk first of all about the grooming gang inquiry, set up, Keir Starmer drag kicking and screaming to announce that some almost 5 months ago now. Still not up and running, still haven't got a chair. 5 of the victims in the panel walking out and saying this is being rigged, we don't want anything to do with it, and particularly got an issue with Jess Phillips, the Home Office safeguarding minister. Is there any way of salvaging that inquiry?
Well, I believe for a long time that this should be a judge-led inquiry. In fact, the survivors have said exactly the same thing.
And why judge-led?
Well, a judge is independent of everybody, and what the survivors are accusing the government of is a cover-up. They believe that the people that have been suggested to chair the inquiry are from the police and social services. As a judge is independent of everybody. The problem at the moment is that it isn't a statutory inquiry under the Inquiries Act 2005. What a statutory inquiry can ensure is that there is compulsory production of documents. Everybody's entitled to representation. A lot of the victims are vulnerable and need support. What Nigel Farage is proposing is that the inquiry is held in Parliament under a select committee, which to me would be doomed to failure because it would be the government marking its own homework.
Well, it wouldn't be the government. I mean, although, of course, Labour have got the majority of MPs in the House of Commons, so they obviously probably have a majority of Labour MPs on it. But do you think that they would have a lot of... Parliament's got a lot of powers to demand that people appear, and they give oath... and there are legal ramifications for them lying under oath and the like.
Well, the problem is that, as far as I'm aware, there aren't sophisticated facilities for abuse survivors to give evidence anonymously.
Right.
In the ICSA inquiry, there was a very sophisticated system of survivors giving evidence away from the inquiry. Yeah. The cameras were turned off when they gave evidence, etc., etc. They were all given synonyms.
I mean, I don't see why a parliamentary inquiry couldn't do that. But it doesn't sound ideal. I mean, the idea, I think, isn't it? I mean, I agree with you. I think it needs to be judge-led. It needs to be, have all the possible statutory powers. But there is a problem with that. As we see with every other inquiry, it takes years. I don't know why it has to. It doesn't need to, in my view, but it always ends up doing.
Yeah, it's a big subject. I mean, trying to deal with grooming gangs all over the UK, including London, we're now here, although that's been denied, is a huge subject. And it's going to take a long time. If it's going to be dealt with properly and thoroughly, it should be dealt with on a statutory footing independently of Parliament. There's a theory of separation of powers. You know, the executive should not be dealing with judicial matters. There'll be accusations of misfeasance, no doubt, negligence in local authorities. That should be dealt with outside Parliament, not within.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There is. I mean, again, it's an outside, but the reality is, of course, Nigel Farage with just 5 MPs, calling for this. You know, it's not going to happen because Nigel Farage has suggested it. So even if it was a go, but I share your concerns. You brought up London. Very big issue. Nigel Farage, as I just said that he thinks that London could be the last great grooming scandal to be uncovered. We don't know. Now, what we do know that Sadiq Khan, the London Mayor, is the Police and Crime Commissioner. He said earlier in this year, under questioning from the Conservative leader on the London Assembly, Susan Hall, he basically had to be asked, I think, quite a handful of times, you know, about the grooming gang scandal, pretending not to understand the question. It was all very bizarre, but basically denying there was a grooming gang scandal in London. Now we've got the Met Police this week saying we're looking again at 9,000 child sex abuse cases. When we had Maggie Oliver on the show, the whistleblower for the Rochdale grooming scandal yesterday, and she said, look, you know, we haven't got the resources to look into 9,000 child sex abuse cases. How do they, you know, where have they got that figure from? Where are the resources coming from? Do you think that there is a grooming scandal yet to be uncovered in London, and how do we uncover it?
I don't think there's any doubt that there's a grooming gang scandal in London. If there wasn't such a scandal, then the Met Police would not be investigating 9,000 cases over the last 15 years. The problem is, statistically, London is a huge borough, extending over a large area, and trying to find the statistics that there is such a scandal is problematic. Whereas in a small town like Rotherham or Rochdale, the statistics are much more.
It's more obvious, isn't it? But do you think that's how it's been able to perhaps, you know, hide, you know, not even in the shadows, but in broad daylight? Because, you know, you've got lots of, you know, big Met Police force, but you've got local council, you know, was it 32 different local councils or so? Yeah. And it's just much easier for it to be hidden, and obviously different communities living in different boroughs, you know, demographically and the like, so it can easily be hidden. But why only after people start talking about this could be a grooming scandal? Why are the Met Police looking at it now? Why have they not been? Why were they not starting to look at it in 2012 when, you know, we had the front page of the Times talking about this?
Exactly. I mean, there are various ex-detectives that have done a lot of work saying that there have been cover-ups in the past. You know, the Met is beset with allegations against it. I think it's something that is very problematic to even investigate or uncover.
You've been dealing with these cases and trying to help the victims for many, many years, Peter. Are you hopeful at all we'll ever get to the bottom of this, that we'll ever stop it happening? Look, you're never going to stop paedophiles. There are always going to be paedophiles. But to stop the case where there are cover-ups and where it is somehow acceptable in any walk of life, that in any job paid for by the taxpayer, where you can turn a blind eye to the abuse of young girls?
No, we'll never get to the bottom of this. I always use the analogy of a balloon full of water. You know, if you squeeze it in one area, it comes out in another area. It's you know, child abuse per se is a creature of secrecy. It only happens where adults can be alone with children in a secret environment. And the paedophiles are very manipulative, they're very clever. How else can they cover up something that happened 40 years ago without anybody finding out? They threaten the children, they intimidate the witnesses, and hey presto, it remains a secret for 40 years. So we will always be playing catch up. We're now looking at you know, the 90s and the noughties. You know, when I first started, we were looking at the 50s and the 60s.
And in 20 years' time, we'll be looking back right now. And that's one of the key things. And it came out really from particularly what Eliane Reynolds, the survivor, was talking about next to Nigel Farage yesterday, that this need to, you know, stop this happening to anyone else right now.
Absolutely.
It's genuinely painful, isn't it? I mean, and in fact, soul destroying to hear your last answer, I have to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always have lived in a cynical world, I'm afraid, and nothing ever surprises me. I've no doubt that London will be the next scandal. The question is, will the government have devote the resources to investigate it properly? Will the police have the resources to investigate it properly? Will we ever uncover the truth? I remain cynical and believe, unfortunately, I don't think we ever will.
Peter Garston, I so appreciate you and your candid answers. Peter Garston is a child abuse lawyer. Thank you very much indeed for that. Tom Slater, it's quite depressing listening to that, but he's someone who's been trying to help these young women, young girls and boys as well, for many, many years. He doesn't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of all of this and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where all you can do is try to deliver as much justice as is possible for as many people as is possible. I suppose where the grooming gangs is concerned, I mean, there's often been kind of cover-ups at an official level if you had a particular institution or a political party or what have you that was affected by some of these things, didn't want it to get out. But there's something particular with the grooming gangs, isn't there? Because the way in which you had police forces, social services, politicians who all felt compelled, not simply by back covering, which is bad enough, but by the kind of dictates of political correctness to not talk about this. That's something that is going to be really difficult to unearth. And the fact that, of course, the idea that it couldn't have possibly touched London, despite the fact
it's just laughable.
It's so much bigger than anywhere else, despite the fact that you could easily see many of those routes coming in and out. The fact that Sadiq Khan just flatly denied that there is any evidence of this, despite the fact that we now know that he had seen those reports from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, which noted grooming gang cases in them. Couldn't talk about the whole scale because that hasn't been looked into, but noted those cases, I think shows you that we're seeing that pattern of cover up and looking over the way just continuing to repeat itself. So of course there's only more to learn.
I honestly think that Sadiq Khan is going to rue the day, and he was told, if there is evidence of grooming gangs, will you have a proper investigation into it? And he said absolutely. Yeah, he's going to rue that day for his personal reputation, because it does look very like that. He may not have covered anything up himself. I don't think that is the case. But just anyone turning a blind eye to this. If you're worried about any kind of crime, the mass gang rape of young girls should be probably near the top of your list. It should make the top 100, yeah?
You would think.
You'd think, wouldn't you? Anyway, it's coming up to 12:20. We're going to take a quick break. Then I'm going to show you images of Jeremy Corbyn. You won't be able to get out of your head. We're going to... Sorry in advance. And then we are going to get your calls. Give us a call on anything you want to talk about. We're talking about the migrants, talking about the grooming gangs. You name it. Give us a budget. You name it. Call us. 0344 499 1000 is the number to have yours saved. This is Talk.
signed up.
This man is clearly in denial about what's actually going on in the city and under his watch to innocent children.
He's mocking. That's what he's doing. He's mocking. This is vile criminality, and kids are at mortal risk here. He's not addressing it. People should be jumping in and saying this stops now. Under my watch, this does not go on. And all he's doing is a seminar in semantics, and he's mocking a good woman who's addressing the problem.
This Justice Secretary could not deport the only small boat migrant who who tried to be deported. Yes. Having been mistakenly released, Hadushka Batu came back to prison asking to be deported, not once, not twice, but 5 times. But he was turned away. Calamity Lamb.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia. I say Hartley-Brewer, I say common sense, but I'm going to tell you about Jeremy Corbyn now. Not much common sense. I don't know what his party's called. What is it? Your party? Hezbollah? Who knows?
Yeah, I like Jezbollah.
I like Jezbollah, but anyway, he's got a new party. Anyway, he's also the MP for Islington North. And Jeremy Corbyn is apparently going to be playing the Wizard of Oslington in a Wicked-inspired panto, Wicked Witches, at the Pleasance Theatre this winter. I don't know if it's just a one-off or not, but you can have a look at the image. There's an image of him just sort of wearing his normal suit, but I believe there are also some images of him dressed up in some weird sort of panto-y clothes as the Wizard of Oz. I don't know what's going on. Do you remember when he did that Channel 4 show? Was it last leg when they put him in a fur coat getting him out of a limo? And that was all part of the height of the Jeremy Corbyn mania.
The slightly more whimsical side to him that we don't
Slightly
always
more whimsical.
see.
It's really weird because you think, oh, he's a little sweet old man. And there he is just sort of leading the most horrific let's face it, anti-Jewish, groups of people in this country. You'd think he was a busted flush, but there were these people still flocking to him.
Could have been a lot worse, Wizard of Osama or something, or
I'm
Jack
surprised.
In the jihadi training camp. There's all sorts of things.
It could have been anything. Don't give him ideas. Don't give him ideas. By the way, the Housing Secretary, Steve Reid, who's obviously got the short straw today, he has talking about these migrants and military bases. He said all options need to be on the table. Using military bases seems to be a sensible way forward, so we can continue to reduce the number of hotels being used. We want to do it as quickly as we can, given the tensions in communities. They are under the illusion they're getting people out of hotels, some into military bases. Open, not sealed up, not secure, and some into normal housing next door to people is going to solve the, quote, tensions in communities. Some later, they are going to be sorely mistaken about that, aren't they?
I dare say they're in for a rude awakening. One or two things is true here. Either they have absolutely no idea what the public are concerned about.
That answer A, yes.
Or they do, but they think they can trick us. Maybe there's a bit of column B there as well. People are upset about the hotels, obviously, some of which because there's a hotel that they used to use for the family events and now they can't. And
certainly in small villages and towns, then they are yes, you say that's where you'd have your 40th wedding anniversary party or something.
So there is a bit of that. That's not the main reason people are upset about them, because their beloved local institution has been taken away from them. It's because of the fact that it's dumping the problem of illegal migration, a problem entirely of the government's making, successive governments making, onto communities, and often communities who really are under the strain in all kinds of other ways. So that's why people are upset. It's a public safety issue, it's a public services issue, it's a public resources issue. To just move it a few miles up the road is not going to cut it.
As I keep saying, that when Keir Starmer was leader of the opposition, very, very simple. You buy up his entire street in Islington, apart from his house, you make them all houses of multiple occupancy. There you go. There you go, sort it out, and you'd be fine with those people living next door to you. No, I'm sorry, that's the reality. I would do that with the entire Labour cabinet. Literally buy up, compulsory purchase every house in the street where they live. No, serious, I'm not even joking. Genuinely, there you go. It's not an issue for you. Off you go. As I've always said, it's like these boards in prisons who think, well, he's a paedophile and he's basically sexually abused God knows how many children over the years, but he says he's not going to do it again, and we believe him. Fine, have him babysit your kids or your grandkids. Put your money where your mouth is, because if you wouldn't, then don't release them into... I mean, I just think people need to live with the consequences. No one, whether we're talking about the civil service, no one in the civil service, no politicians, no one, they never live with the consequences of what they get wrong and what they do wrong, but the ordinary members of the public do. That's where I am on this. Look, let's go to the calls. So 0344 499 1000. Michael is in Northamptonshire. He wants to have his say. Good afternoon to you, Michael.
Hello, Julia. How are you doing?
Very well, my love. What do you want to say?
I thought it was quite interesting what you're just saying about civil servants and politicians and consequences.
Yeah.
There was obviously we've been talking about this guy who was mistakenly released from prison when he should have gone to a deportation place. But actually, I think it was last week as well. There was a case of a mother in Birmingham in Walsall, I think it was, at a hotel, who worked at a migrant hotel. He was murdered by one of the occupants. I won't say what... I mean, it upset me when I read what happened to her. And so I wouldn't say that because it's half-term and there might be kids and all that listening and whatever. But it was truly awful, all right? And what I would say is, and talking about consequences, every single Tory MP and Labour MP is responsible for aiding and abetting the sexual assault, murder and rape of women in this country, all right? That is the bottom line. And until that becomes a reality, until we start actually saying that forcefully, you guys do, all right? But the rest of the media is nowhere on this. And, they barely mentioned what happened to that poor woman in the news reels. Barely mentioned it. And they should be ashamed of themselves for that. And ultimately, until that becomes a reality, until every time Starmer turns up somewhere, or Lammy, or any of that front bench turn up somewhere, and people just say to them, why are you aiding and abetting the rape and murder of children and women in this country? Why are you doing that? And then they might get it. Because until we do, they will not. They're not listening to us.
Well, the only reason that even anyone started taking any action was after we had the Epping protests, again, peaceful protests led by mums and grandmas and aunts and sisters and children, because we want our streets to be safe. Michael, I couldn't agree with you more. I really couldn't. Andrew is on the line. He's in Chelmsford. Andrew, you want to talk about this the upcoming budget?
Indeed, and specifically, afternoon, Julia. By the way. Specifically the mansion tax. And I want people to reframe the way they think about this. It's called a mansion tax, but what this is, it's a sinister move to tax people on unrealised gains on the notional value of an asset. Who's the arbiter of the value of that asset? Who decides what it is? I could have bought a house 10 years ago, spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on renovating it, or I could have neglected it for 10 years. Who's to decide the value of that asset?
But if you've renovated it and done a really good job, spent your own hard-earned taxed money on it, you could then be penalised for improving the value of it.
Step towards, and I know it's slightly hyperbolic, but this is a step towards communism. And most people, when they hear about taxes, they let out a sigh of relief when they're not caught by this particular move. But if they get a taste for taxing an asset where they decide the value of it, okay, it's unrealised. An asset is what it's worth. It's what the value of it is what worth.
When you've sold your home, this is the value of the home, or what you're paying for a home, stamp duty. At least there is a market value that is established at that point. I mean, I don't agree with stamp duty either. I think it's an insane tax. But at least there is some objective judgment.
Get a taste to value an asset, they will come after all assets, unrealised or realised. So people out there think, oh, great, I don't live in a house that's $2 million. Thank goodness for that. It won't be long before that threshold is lower and that threshold is widened for all assets.
The threshold doesn't even need to be low, because we've seen that with the thresholds on taxes. That just the property prices keep going up and up and up because we've got more and more people, because we import them all and we don't build enough new houses, and they're not going to build enough new houses in the next the next few years, same as they haven't for the last 30 years. So house prices, I mean, again, £2 million in most parts of the country buys you, wow, I mean, amazing, literally a mansion. £2 million in large parts of London doesn't buy you more than a family home. That is the reality.
Puts that value on it. Who's going to say that house is worth 1.9
well, also,
2.1?
Are they going to be sending in the planning inspector? I mean, as a council official going to turn up and go, oh, I just want to double check, is your home worth 1.9 million or 2 million?
It is absolutely absurd in the execution of it.
Yeah.
But the sinister move...
The principle.
Of taxing something where you haven't even realised the profit in it. Now, I don't agree with a capital gain on a principal property. I do not agree with that. However, that would make more sense to me than this one. Tax someone when you realise the profit, rather than what they tell you the profit of it is.
Yeah, and again, I think the key thing there is that people are going, well, it's not my problem. It's like the whole, people quite happy to vote for other people's taxes to go up, yet it has a funny habit ending up, hitting your door as well. Andrew, that is such an interesting call. Thank you so much for that. I must bring Tom Slater in on that. Look, again, vast majority of us, I include myself, do not live in £2 million homes. Wish I did. I know people who live in homes worth a lot more than that, who'd be facing that. But you think if someone's going to, say you've got a £3 million home, again, you'd be surprised, doesn't buy you as much as you think in many parts of certainly London and the South East. Of course they're rich, of course they are. No, you don't own homes like that unless you're rich. Your little old lady who's widowed and is living in the home, it's still worth a fortune. But you're talking about people paying, say, if it was 3 million, 10 grand extra a year in tax, but out of taxed income. Mm-hmm. So they've already paid tax. So it's actually, if you're a high earner, we're talking about someone having to earn about, 18 grand. To that, they're actually being taxed 18 grand. And again, there's no reason why those numbers wouldn't just start creeping down, because at the end of the day, even amount of tax, it's not actually going to be enough money to deal with the budget woes.
Well, I think that's the key point, because you start talking about, people owning properties in excess of £2 million and then being taxed more, people do start reaching for the world's tiniest violin.
Yeah,
but
totally.
I think the key point here is the fact that it's really not enough. Like this talk about wealth taxes, this talk about mansion taxes. I get that there's a certain part of the Labour Party base which gets very excited about that.
Tax the rich.
It will not achieve anything. The issues of the economy are much more structural than that. It's not because there are people at the top who are creaming it off and, holding on to it for themselves. It's the fact that we haven't grown, basically, for a couple of decades now.
Yeah.
It's because of the fact that we have sky-high energy prices, the highest in the developed world. It's because of the fact that we have a worklessness crisis, which is becoming a sap, not purely on UK PLC, but also on the people who are caught up in all the perverse incentives of our benefit system. There are loads of problems that need to be dealt with. Making the relatively small proportion of quite well-off people, or certainly asset-rich people in the country, a little bit worse off is not going to help touch the size of that issue. So why don't we focus on the thing that will actually make everyone's lives better, and then we can talk about redistribution after that. Maybe that's the right way to look at it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lee, for that. We'll take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to our old friend, Professor Carol Sikora, about this new announcement about same-day prostate cancer checks on the NHS. But will it actually save lives? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, but there's some very good news for men. Mostly the people who get prostate cancer, has to be said. According to some, of course, some women can get it. But to interpret MRI scans in seconds. Well, let's talk about this with Professor Karol Sikora. He's Medical Director of the Rutherford Cancer Centres and joins us. Good afternoon to you, Karol.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Great to talk to you. I'm making light, I'm being joking, because, of course, whenever it's any care for women, the NHS always seems to talk about people who have, various different, cervical cancer or goodness knows what. Look, we know it's men that get prostate cancer. We also know, though, do we not, that most men who get prostate cancer die with it, not of it. How concerned should men be about prostate cancer, and how much of a game changer is this new development?
Well, first of all, prostate cancer is the disease of older men. Average age is 72 for new prostate cancer patients. And such men in Britain are very stoic. They just don't want to go to the doctor. Yeah. They have to be bullied by their wives to go and get something sorted out, whether it's prostate or anything else. The other problem is, as men get older, the prostate normally enlarges, making difficulty to pass water, getting up at night to pass water. So they have the symptoms that are ascribed to benign causes. The test is not great. The PSA, prostate-specific antigen blood test, you can read it out in 20 minutes if you have the kit, so there's no problem. There's nothing new about the NHS announcing that. I think the announcement's really about trying to do something quickly for men that have come forward to their GP, come forward to a clinic somewhere, an NHS walk-in centre. You can have the test and we can process it.
Yeah.
The problem with cancer in the NHS, and the reason that we're behind Europe, even Poland now for many types of cancer in terms of survival, is that we just don't have rapid access to treatment. Yeah. So the target NHS England has, the same Peter Johnson that's quoted in the paper today, the target is 62 days from the diagnosis to treatment, and that's not being met in a third of patients around the hospital.
I mean, waiting 2 months for cancer treatment is an abomination anyway, but the fact that a third of people aren't even getting treatment within that time, and I've had a friend with different cancer, with breast cancer, and being sort of terrifyingly relaxed about waiting for her cancer treatment. And I looked up the stats, every 2 weeks that you wait, you've got another 5% risk of dying. I'm like, this is insane.
Exactly, and the survival rates show that. In Poland, the target from start to... My father was Polish, that's why I know the system in Poland. It's 7 days, the target, which is reasonable. In France,
that's just a bit of admin.
People are seen the next day in France. I mean,
but hold on a minute. They don't have the NHS, so surely everything's awful and people are dying in the streets, no?
They have a social insurance model, public-private partnerships. It works. If you need an MRI scan, you get one the next day. And I think the problem here is the only way you can get an MRI scan the next day, you have to pay for it. And that's ridiculous. We paid our insurance. We paid for quick service, but whether it's for hips, knees, whatever.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because I know so many family members, rich and poor, who've been paying for operations in recent years, and people who, they are genuinely dipping into their savings to having to pay for scans and things to get themselves just sort of basically bumped up the list to try and find out what on earth is wrong. And more people are doing it. But people say, no, we want a free NHS. It's not free. It's free at the point of need, but it's not free. And people don't realise, if you were paying for your insurance policy, social insurance, that would be something you were paying for. That would, the theory should be certainly your taxes would no longer be needing to pay for it so much.
Exactly. And, I'm a heretic about the NHS. It can deliver fantastic care. The cancer care it delivers is fantastic. The people are expert. They're as good as any country in Europe and in the world, in fact. The problem is access. Access to your GP, access to the hospital, access to scans, and to get on the treatment pathway, as we now call it, it's not easy. If you can get to the front of the queue, you're in fantastic position for your cancer. But getting there is a struggle. And, I recommend people, there's no point getting aggressive. That's not going to help you. You have to be assertive and persistent and become a little bit of a troublemaker in a nice sort of way, not an unpleasant troublemaker. You using four-letter words is going to get you closed doors.
Well, no, absolutely. I have certainly managed to push appointments sooner than they would otherwise have been when family members of mine have been given an appointment and gone, oh, well, I'll wait 6 months. And I've called up and said, unfortunately for you, you're now dealing with me. And this is how it's going to go. But you shouldn't have to be sharp-elbowed to do it. And we know when people talk about survival rates from many, many different diseases, including cancer, and people talk about, people in the poorest parts of the country die sooner. And things like, okay, there's diet, there's smoking, there's drinking, everything else. But there's also, you haven't got the sharp elbows to go, no, I insist that I get seen sooner.
Delay is the most powerful way of rationing a service, and the NHS all healthcare systems are rationed. You can't give everything to everybody, especially if they don't need it. So you have to ration. But the NHS is below capacity. It doesn't have the capacity that everyone has to be rationed. And delay is very powerful because people will die. They'll go privately, as we suggested, and various other ways to get round it. So you'll reduce the demand. And that's the problem. There's no brownie points for exceeding the demand in the system. If you're running a budget airline, you want to fill those seats on every single plane. And that's what they do. That's why it's such a crush to get on a budget airline. But in the NHS, they don't want you to come. The reality is, whatever you think about the sort of the religion of the NHS that we have, it's a limited capacity and it has to ration care. And it does it for hips and knee surgery, everything. And that's why people do it privately.
Yeah, and when again, very good close family member of mine has just paid a fortune for a knee operation. She would never realistically have got, in goodness how many years, on the NHS. What do you make of the news that we've actually got more and more private healthcare being used? The NHS basically, having to use the available facilities in private healthcare, because I know that some of you were campaigning on, or rather for cancer centres, we've got all these empty beds. For the love of God, use them.
Public-private partnerships are used all over the world and they work very effectively. We have them in the UK. I mean, the NHS uses it for diagnostic, MRI scanners, CT scanners. You see the vans in the car park of many hospitals. I mean, it's ridiculous. They keep coming year after year. You'd think they'd build the capacity within the hospital, but they come back. And that's the beginning of public-private partnership. The next step is, well, can't we deliver clinical services in the same way, actually treatment services? And that will come. It's interesting how care homes have become completely private and no one's turned a bit of notice to that.
GPs of private care, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, just how much the healthcare, this mythical public body is actually private already. Professor Carol Sikora, always so good to talk to you, Medical Director of the Rutherford Cancer Centre. Thank you very much indeed for that. Tom Slater, listening to you, look, 72 is the average age that men are getting diagnosed with prostate cancer. You're quite a few years off that, quite a few decades off that. But it's a serious issue. I mean, we'd have an issue with men not going to the doctor and being nagged by their wives to go and do it. I'm married to one of those people, I know this. But I mean, at the end, so much of this comes down to, we're going to be doing this, you get diagnosed quickly. Being diagnosed quickly isn't that much more of a help if you're not even going to get treated within the next 2 months.
No, exactly. I think that's one of the reasons why this issue is even more exacerbated in a sense, because you do have, as Carol was talking there, the kind of general sort of stiff upper lip stoicism. I'm all right, I'll get through it. I don't need to go to the doctor mentality that a lot of men have. But also there's that sense that any interaction with the health service just feels like a world of pain. It's just everything is going to be so long drawn out, everything is so complicated, everything is so bureaucratic. If everything was working pretty smoothly, then that nudge to go and get yourself tested, it doesn't involve what you think it involves, it is just a blood test. All of that would be a lot of an easier sell
clarification.
If it wasn't,
Yeah, absolutely. If it wasn't going to be a battle every time, indeed. Tom Slater, thank you very much. Up next, we are going to talk about a story that just keeps rumbling on in the background. Yeah, I just made front pages, but it's not necessarily caught the mood of the nation, but that China spy case. Well, there are new developments there. We're going to be talking to the Director of UK-China Transparency, Sam Dunning, about why those new developments, new evidence has emerged that actually we should care very much about. That's up next. This is Talk.
strikes again.
I cannot stand Sadiq Khan. He's a weasel. He really is. He squirms his way out of everything. And that interview with the lady the other day, with
Susan
really
Holmes.
explain to me what she really means. Oh, stop being such a smart ass. You know exactly what she means, and you're showing yourself up and you're humiliating yourself.
Those pages of evidence are enough to make him resign.
He is not going to resign. He is protected by his friendship with Keir Starmer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:52 is the time. We've got some very interesting polling about Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer. We'll get to in a couple of moments. First up, though, no doubt at all, Keir Starmer is under a lot of pressure over lots of issues, but that China spy case is not going away. There have been new developments on that, as we have seen that Jonathan Powell, his national security advisor, did discuss the consequences of the China spy trial going ahead at a meeting in Whitehall just 2 days before the case collapsed, when they were absolutely aware that the government hadn't given the evidence that said that China was an enemy, which meant that there would not be enough evidence to bring the case to trial. Well, let's talk about this with Sam Dunning. He's Director of UK-China Transparency. They're an independent organisation looking at the close ties between the UK and China. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
I do think there's an issue with this story. One, it's very complicated. A lot of different names of people we haven't heard of, let's be honest. Two, there's been lots of other big stories going on. Why do you think this story is still rumbling on, and why do you think this latest revelation is significant and we should care about it?
Well, the story is rumbling on because the case itself hinges on the idea that China should be a threat to national security, which separately has been a kind of political hot button issue, independently of the case.
Yeah.
So you've got this kind of collision where a broader political debate is actually relevant for the prosecution of these two men, which obviously is not going ahead now.
But the key thing is here is whether there has been a cover-up, whether there has effectively been interference by the Labour government, whether it's by Jonathan Powell, whether it's by the Attorney General Lord Hermer. Question marks over both of those men's roles in the giving away, effectively, of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, very close links with China, and the concerns for our Diego Garcia military base that we share with the US. But so there have been ongoing issues. We've got the Chinese embassy, the mega embassy they want to put just within my eye line, basically next to the city, over sensitive commercial cables and the like. There just seem to be a lot of question marks about why on earth is this government, and indeed some question marks about the last government as well, why are they cozying up to China? It speaks of more than just, well, of course we want good economic ties with a big superpower. That's what the worry is for a lot of us.
I think it is indeed complicated, but one of the key themes is that this government, like previous governments, believes that they can get a lot of investment from China. Now, I think actually, if you look at the historical record, and this is something that needs to be studied and talked about a bit more, many of the cases of Chinese investment into this country have not actually been successful. There was meant to be a huge investment into our nuclear power plants, which basically came to nothing and ended up being quite costly.
I would say that's quite a good thing. I don't want them involved in our nuclear power plants.
Yes, I think many people would agree. So seeking to rely upon their investment, years of planning went into this, was arguably a mistake. But successive governments think, okay, we're going to basically help improve the economy in partnership with China.
Yeah.
Whether that's actually feasible, I think, has gone rather unquestioned.
But it's also whether it's a good thing. It's like our close links with Qatar. I'm in a building that's owned by I believe, Qataris. Is that a good thing? I mean, should we be selling off our energy, or any of our infrastructure, any systems we've got, any critical industry to a hostile nation state? I mean, MI5, MI6, everyone there seem to be very, very clear they are a hostile nation. Lots of experts who've been right about a lot of stuff beforehand, a lot of experts are not right about stuff, saying we could be, the West could be at war with China within the next decade. What are we doing, selling off the family China? To China, effectively, to China.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, this case really crystallises the debates within government, and we hear repeated reference to, say, Treasury officials who want to build, that economic relationship that's actually proven rather elusive, no matter how much we've sucked up over the years. But then, on the other hand, national security officials who are incredibly worried about the fact that Chinese actors have penetrated many of our digital systems on a kind of unprecedented and very threatening scale. I mean, anyone listening, you can be sure that the Chinese, they hacked the Electoral Commission and they've got all the voter data. That's not to mention attacks on social care companies, attacks on companies, researching vaccines, attacks on government departments, etc. So, different kinds of civil servants really differ on this, and the politicians, I'm not sure they quite know who to listen to.
Yeah, indeed. But that's the concern, is that Jonathan Powell is the National Security Advisor. He's been a senior figure, he's in Blair government as well. He should know better. That is the concern. And people, it doesn't add up, I think, is what a lot of people are thinking. Sam Dunning, Director of UK China Transparency, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's come to Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. I know you guys have written about this issue as well. I mean, I smell a rat. I smell something very, very dodgy. I genuinely think, I'm not accusing any individual of anything, because that's stupid. I don't have enough evidence of that, but I don't understand why our government is doing what it is doing. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I think it makes sense when it's clear that they wanted to cozy up to China. I think they had this very misplaced idea that you couldn't stick up for your own national security. You can, turn down crazy suggestions like you allow the Chinese to build a kind of super spy embassy right in the middle of your capital city, and that therefore you wouldn't be able to do business with them whatsoever. I mean, our investment from China has waxed and waned over the years. It doesn't always line up perfectly with how good relations were. The whole, the kind of golden age, supposedly under Cameron and Osborne, didn't produce loads of investment, but it did produce a lot of incursions of the Chinese industry into some of our key infrastructure. So it's one of those things where it's clear that there's a belief here that, particularly in the absence of any kind of domestic economic growth, we should just be trying to gather that investment from overseas. It's not obvious that's the answer to our economic problems, and it causes all these national security problems. But a Labour government that is out of ideas and is advised by many people like Jonathan Powell, who have pre-existing relationships and links to China, is pretty toxic mix.
Absolutely. Here's something interesting, just before we go. YouGov poll shows that Nigel Farage has overtaken Keir Starmer as the nation's preferred choice of Prime Minister for the first time, seen as a better candidate to lead the country. 33% of the people, compared with 30% who prefer Sir Keir Starmer. That's very interesting, because that's just on the economy and who do you think would make the better leader of the country. Those are often the two key questions that decide elections.
How telling. I mean, we would, if someone had told us a year ago that we would be looking at those kinds of numbers, people think that you were kidding yourself.